Chapter 433. Originally, the human camp had over 150,000 Qi transforming realm swordsmen and over 30,000 Qi high swordsmen. However, after the fierce battle with the demon beast army for 4 to 6 hours, there were only 80,000 Qi transforming realm swordsmen and less than 90,000 Qi high swordsmen left alive. In just 4 to 6 hours, 70,000 Qi transformation realm swordsmen and close to 10,000 Qi high realm swordsmen had died. It was extremely tragic. 70% of the surviving swordsmen were injured. The seriously injured could barely stand, while the lightly injured could still fight the demonic beasts with all their might. Most of the swordsmen were covered in blood. Most of the blood belonged to the demonic beasts, and some of it was their own. After the continuous high-intensity battle, the swordsmen immediately woke up from their excitement. They immediately felt that their entire body was sore and weak. The arm that was holding the sword felt extremely uncomfortable, as if it was dislocated. They wished that they could just cut off their own arm and be done with it. If the demonic beast army attacked again, most of the swordsmen would not be able to use their full strength. The death rate would be even higher than before. On the side of the demonic beast army, more than 600,000 demonic beasts had died. Now there were only 300,000 demonic beasts left. Among these 300,000 demonic beasts, tens of thousands of demonic beasts were heavily injured, and close to 100,000 demonic beasts were lightly injured. Light injuries did not have much effect on the demonic beasts. They could still use their full strength. If not for the appearance of the 4 middle-tier demonic beast overlords, the demonic beasts would have broken out of their berserk state. If the demonic beasts continued to attack, it was possible that the swordsmen would have died before the demonic beasts died. This situation allowed the swordsmen to let out a sigh of relief. No matter what, they had finally obtained some time to rest. The swordsmen all took out their pills. At this moment they did not care if the pills were precious or not. The most important thing was to stay alive. The monstrous sword aura surged. 4 terrifying auras crushed the sword aura, causing the sword aura to almost collapse. With the support of his strong willpower and unparalleled essence, Chu Mu's sword aura was like a tempered sword embryo. It became purer and more condensed as it improved by a little bit. Roar the mountain-splitting ape's huge fists pounded on its chest, making loud banging sounds. The surrounding air vibrated and ripples spread out. The swordsmen thousands of meters away felt as if their hearts were being pounded, almost bursting. It was extremely uncomfortable. The white steam spewed out of the black mountain bull's nostrils became even denser. When it hit the ground, it immediately exploded. The silver dipper demon wolf's sharp claws lightly slashed, and 3 cold lights seemed to split open the void. The purple lightning on the thunder-winged golden rock's wings became denser and crazily jumped. They possessed the bloodline of the ancient divine beasts and devil beasts. Although it was only a trace of a weak bloodline, it was enough to make them extremely powerful. At the same time, they also possessed intelligence that ordinary demonic beasts did not have. From Chu Mu's body, the 4 demonic beast overlords felt a trace of threat. It wasn't that Chu Mu could kill them now, but Chu Mu's potential was too high. Once he matured, he could endanger their lives. It was in their nature to kill enemies that threatened them. The 4 demonic beast overlords all rushed towards Chu Mu. The other swordsmen's faces all changed, and they quickly drew their swords. It wasn't that they wanted to help Chu Mu, it was their pride that made them draw their swords. The 4 demonic beast overlords didn't care about them at all. They all wanted to fight Chu Mu. Didn't that mean that they were weaker than Chu Mu? In the eyes of the strong Qi High Realm swordsman, Chu Mu was only at the lower Qi High Realm. His strength was only comparable to a peak Qi High Realm swordsman. Although he was strong, it was not enough to make them admit defeat. Some of the strong Qi High Realm swordsmen even thought that they could easily defeat Chu Mu. If that was the case, how could they be willing to fall behind? The swordsmen used their powerful sword moves, and the sword light pierced through the sky towards the four demonic beast overlords. These attacks made the four demonic beast overlords feel threatened. They all gave up on Chu-Mu and turned around to deal with the humans who dared to attack them. The Thunder Wing Golden Rock's speed was unparalleled. It disappeared with a swoosh and appeared on top of a strong Chi High Realm swordsman. With a light flap of its wings, two purple lightning as thick as an arm struck down from the sky. Not only did the Thunder Wing Golden Rock have unparalleled speed, it also had the ability to control lightning. It was very powerful. The swordsman's sword missed, and a shadow appeared above him. Following that, two powerful lightning strikes struck down, causing the swordsman's face to change color and his hair to stand on end. Just as he was about to use his movement skill to dodge, the two lightning strikes struck down and tore apart the swordsman's protective sword chi. Even the top-rank armor on his body was shattered. A horrible scream was heard. The strong Chi High Realm sword warrior was struck by two lightning bolts and his body was charred black. Black smoke kept coming out of his body, but he was not dead yet. However, another lightning bolt struck him and blew him into pieces. In just a breath's time, a strong Chi High Realm swordsman was killed by three lightning strikes from the Thunder Wing Golden Rock. This scene made the hearts of the swordsmen twitch. Another strong Chi High swordsman was smashed to death by the Black Mountain Bull. His body was torn into pieces. Another two strong Chi High swordsmen were torn apart by the claws of the Silver Gale Demon Wolf. Another one was smashed into a meat patty by the mountain-splitting ape's huge palm. The four demonic beast overlords showed their terrifying strength as soon as they attacked. It was no wonder that only the strong sword masters could fight against them. "Let's work together and kill them," a Chi High Realm swordsman shouted. At this moment, they all knew that none of them could fight against the four demonic beast overlords one-on-one. Just look at what happened to the four demonic beast overlords. Instant kill. Maybe two or three of them had the strength of a sword master, but there were also differences between sword masters. The strong sword masters could easily defeat the weak sword masters. The strength of these four demonic beast overlords could only be matched by the strong sword masters. In this situation, the only way was to work together. Once they decided to work together, the swordsmen all used their movement skills and moved quickly. There were originally 1,000 strong Chi High Realm swordsmen, but now there were only 990 left. The 990 strong swordsmen were quickly divided into four groups. Each group had more than 200 swordsmen attacking a demonic beast overlord together. More than 200 strong Chi High Realm swordsmen attacking together was very powerful. But the four demonic beast overlords were even more powerful. They all had their own ways to deal with the attacks. The thunder-winged Golden Rock's speed was unparalleled. With a swoosh, it disappeared, causing all the 200 attacks to miss. The Black Mountain Bull's body shook and a black ripple spread out. A layer of black light appeared on its skin and all the attacks were destroyed. The Black Mountain Bull was not hurt at all. The Silver Gang Demon Wolf's body moved quickly. It was hard to tell which one was the real one. It dodged all the sword attacks and at the same time, it used its claws to destroy the sword attacks that it could not dodge. The mountain-splitting ape roared towards the sky. The invisible sound waves spread out rapidly, and the surrounding air became as thick as water. The giant palms opened up. Each palm was like a black cloud that covered the sky. Under the palm's attack, the air was pushed out and there were explosions. Waves of invisible ripples spread out rapidly from the center of the palms. That was the pure demonic power of the mountain-splitting ape condensed in the center of the palms. The speed of the palms was slow and heavy like a mountain. The enormous power contained in the palms caused the sound of tsunamis. All the different colored sword attacks were destroyed by the giant palms. The giant palm slammed into the ground. When it was more than 10 meters away from the ground, the terrifying wind pressure caused the ground to collapse. Countless cracks spread rapidly with the 2 points as the center, spreading in all directions. The ground sank by several meters. With a loud boom, the earth shook. The mountain-splitting ape's palms slammed into the collapsed ground. Kacha, 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 incessant sounds could be heard. Cracks as thick as thighs rapidly spread forward like pythons. The sand, stones, and dust on the ground were all shattered by the huge vibrations and shot into the sky. Invisible ripples spread out, and the swordsmen in the range of the vibrations all felt that they could not stand steadily. Kill! Although the first move had failed, these swordsmen were all powerful and resolute. They would not be shaken by this and launch another attack. After having a general understanding of the attacking methods of these 4 middle-grade demonic beast overlords, the swordsmen no longer held back. They all brought out their tyrannical strength, some attacking from afar, while some engaging in close combat. The mountain-splitting ape that was more than 20 meters tall when it stood upright was like a skyscraper. The attacks of the swordsmen were like tickles to it. At most, they would leave a small wound on its body. Not only did they not really injure the mountain-splitting ape, but they also angered it and made it even more violent. Under the attack of the giant palms, the surrounding ground collapsed into ruins. However, its body was huge and its speed was slow. If the swordsmen were prepared, the damage it caused would be limited. The black mountain cow's body was the strongest. Furthermore, its demonic power formed a demonic aura shield that was distributed on its skin. No matter how the swordsman attacked, it was hard to cause any damage. Luckily, the black mountain cow only had a strong body, but it did not have many attacking methods. As long as the swordsmen were on guard against its iron hooves, they would basically not be hit. On the other hand, the silver gale demonic wolf was very fast and agile. Its attacks were extremely sharp, and there was nothing it could not break. Although its body was not as tough as the mountain-splitting ape and the black mountain cow, and 3 half-meter-long wounds were left on its body by the swordsman, it had already killed more than 20 swordsmen. With a wave of its claws, it was so fast that no one could react. 3 cold lights pierced through the air, and another swordsman was caught by the cold light. The protective sword chi was like nothing, and the upper-grade armor on his body was as fragile as tofu. His body was directly torn apart by the 3 cold lights, and blood splattered everywhere. The thunder wing golden rock in the sky was the most difficult to deal with. Its unparalleled speed caused the swordsman's attacks to miss, and the advantage of flying forced the swordsmen to use their flying secret arts. To the swordsmen, the flying secret arts only provided them with the ability to fly. It could not be used as an aid in battle. Furthermore, because they were in mid-air, they could not use their full strength. With their weakness against the opponent's strength, they were immediately at a disadvantage. The Thunder Wing Golden Rock controlled the lightning to strike down. More than 10 swordsmen had already died under the terrifying power of the lightning strikes, and 3 had died under the Thunder Wing Golden Rock's sharp claws. This time, the Thunder Wing Golden Rock's target was Chu-Mu, and it charged over in an instant. Without any hesitation, Chu-Mu immediately used the 3rd level of the heaven-traversing space technique. With a whoosh, his body exploded into hundreds of shadows that rushed in all directions. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidien.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 434. Golden light shot out and smashed one of the phantoms. 98 of the 99 phantoms disappeared in the blink of an eye. Chu-Mu appeared again, his face slightly pale. This was the 3rd level of the heaven-traversing secret technique, Phantom Crack. As the name suggested, the body would produce many phantoms that would rush in all directions. It would look like the body had exploded into 100 phantoms, and one of them was the real body. However, because the phantoms were too fast and had a certain degree of confusion, it was difficult to distinguish the real from the phantoms. It was an excellent dodging technique, and it was also an excellent counterattack technique, if used properly. It was the first time that someone had been able to dodge the Thunderwing Golden Rock's attack. The Thunderwing Golden Rock let out a sharp cry and flapped its wings. A thunderbolt appeared above Chu Mu and struck down. Chu Mu felt his scalp tingle and his hair stand on end. Before he could think, his body had already reacted instinctively and quickly moved to the side. Just a small step away, a purple thunderbolt as thick as an arm struck down from the side. Chu Mu's protective sword chi was affected and shattered. The protection of the feathered armor was not activated in time. Half of his body felt numb from the electric shock. At the same time, the four swordsmen released their sword moves. They rushed toward the Thunderwing Golden Rock like flood dragons and torrent. The Thunderwing Golden Rock did not have strong defensive abilities like the mountain-splitting ape and the black mountain bull. Once it was hit by the four sword moves, it would definitely be injured. Its body flashed and disappeared into a golden light, causing the four attacks to miss again. The Thunderwing Golden Rock was too fast. Even Chu Mu's perfect vision sword could only capture a vague figure. It was very difficult to lock onto the Thunderwing Golden Rock and hit it. How could they fight without locking onto it? In theory, more than 200 swordsmen could easily kill the Thunderwing Golden Rock. The problem was that they could hit it. However, the Thunderwing Golden Rock was too fast and could not be hit at all. It also had the ability to control thunder and lightning. Its attack power was terrifying. Up until now, the Thunderwing Golden Rock had not been injured at all. However, nearly 20 of the 200 swordsmen had died. The swordsmen watching from afar were trying their best to recover as they watched the battles around them with wide eyes. They were extremely nervous. The 300,000-strong demonic beast army was also watching the battle between the four mid-grade demonic beast overlords and the human swordsmen. Without orders, they wouldn't attack. The tall mountain-splitting ape stood there unmoving, using its powerful body and its pair of palms to fight against more than 200 swordsmen. The 200 swordsmen were unable to do anything to it, and it had instead killed nearly 10 of them. As the saying went, enough ants could bite an elephant to death. Under the combined attacks of over 200 swordsmen, more and more wounds appeared on the mountain-splitting ape's body. Although each wound was very small compared to its body, when there were so many wounds, the mountain-splitting ape still felt waves of pain as blood flowed out. The black mountain bulls rushed here and there, shaking their heads and horns. The swordsmen all used their movement techniques to dodge and counterattack, but the black mountain bull's defense was too strong. At most, their attacks only left white scratches on their bodies, unable to cause any damage. Similarly, only 3 swordsmen were killed by the black mountain bulls. The number of swordsmen that died to the Silver Dipper monstrous wolf's claws was the most. There were already 32 of them. Its sharp claws were indestructible and extremely fast. As long as one was locked onto, it was almost impossible to dodge. Fortunately, the Silver Dipper monstrous wolf's defense was far inferior to the Black Mountain Bull's, and its speed was far inferior to the Thunderwing Golden Rock. There were 8 wounds on its body, and each of them was dripping with blood. This began to affect the Silver Dipper monstrous wolf's movements, causing its speed to decrease. Chu Mu took a pill to recover his sword chi. The previous slaughter had used up a small portion of his sword chi. Using the heaven-traversing secret technique's 3rd level, Phantom 100 Crack, had used up a large amount of sword chi. With his current cultivation, he could only use it 3 times at his peak. Now, Chu Mu's remaining sword chi was only enough for 1 Phantom 100 Crack. He had to take a pill to recover as soon as possible. The Thunderwing Golden Rock's speed is too fast. Whether it's using the stone-shaking wave sword or the space-splitting sword, it's hard to hit it. The best time to attack is when it's close to me. Chu Mu's eyes shone brightly as he stared at the rapidly moving golden light. The Thunderwing Golden Rock could cover a distance of several dozen meters in an instant. With such speed, even the space-splitting sword, which was extremely fast, could not lock onto it. Therefore, if he wanted to injure or even kill the Thunderwing Golden Rock, the only way was to get close to it. Moreover, there was only one chance. With the Thunderwing Golden Rock's intelligence, it kept making the same mistake. This time, let's try out the power of my new sword technique, Chumu thought to himself. He took a deep breath and stared at the Thunderwing Golden Rock without blinking. He focused his mind, and everything around him disappeared. There was only the constantly moving golden light in his eyes. The benefits of having a powerful soul showed once again. Chumu quickly entered a special state. This state had a name, hyperfocus. In this state there was only a target in his eyes. His thoughts became clearer than ever, and his vision was pushed to the limit. Everything that could be captured was captured by his eyes. Time passed bit by bit. The golden light's movement seemed to have slowed down. The moving tracks formed tiny golden lines that connected together and appeared in Chumu's eyes. The space in front of him seemed to be a world of countless tiny golden lines. They crisscrossed without any pattern. Chumu's eyes fell on the golden light and followed its high-speed movement. In an instant, the golden light changed direction. Chumu suddenly realized that the Thunderwing Golden Rock's target was him. As soon as he thought of this, the golden light had already rushed toward Chumu. In the blink of an eye, it was in front of Chumu. The highly focused mind and powerful soul power made Chumu's vision clearer than ever. He could even see the dust in the air. In his eyes, a pale golden Thunderwing Golden Rock was rushing toward him at an indescribable speed. Its sharp claws were open, and the cold light on the claws was clear and dazzling. Because it was so fast, the sharp claws seemed to tear the space apart, leaving tiny scratches. In the hundredth of a second, Chumu didn't even think. He instinctively reacted in minute subtlety. The sword aura wings on his back didn't move. Instead, he relied on the vibration of his muscles to move 3 feet in the air, narrowly dodging the thunder-winged Golden Rock's sharp claws. Sword. It was impossible to describe the magnificence of this sword because Chumu had just slashed out. Its speed was not fast or slow, and it was very even. It maintained the same speed from the beginning, as if it would be maintained until the end. With a sharp sound, the sword slashed through the air, leaving a faint black shadow. The black shadow emitted a frightening aura, as if a layer of skin had been peeled off. A strong sense of danger welled up in the Thunderwing Golden Rock's heart. This was the first time it had felt this way when facing a human. It suddenly flapped its wings, and its speed instantly increased by 30%. It rushed forward and was about to escape the attack range of this sword. As if it had sensed the Thunderwing Golden Rock's outburst, the speed of the sword suddenly increased by several times. It slashed through the air, and a faint black shadow spread out like an ink painting. An extremely terrifying power condensed on the sword, but it did not emit any fluctuations. It was as if the terrifying energy had squeezed into the sword and become a part of it, causing the sword to undergo an indescribable change. The weight of the sword seemed to have increased by 3 times. Like a stream of light, the sword slashed horizontally. Following that, an incomparably sharp scream resounded throughout the world. The thunder-winged Golden Rock suddenly flapped its wings, and its speed increased a little. It transformed into a golden bolt of lightning and shot forward. A few drops of blood dripped down, and a broken claw fell down. Chumu picked up the claw with the tip of his sword. It was very big. The Thunderwing Golden Rock had 2 claws, and now that one of them had been cut off by Chumu, it was severely injured. Surprisingly, the injured Thunderwing Golden Rock did not fight back. Instead, it turned into a golden lightning and flew towards the direction of the Chaoyao Mountain. In the blink of an eye, there was only a small golden dot left, and then it turned into a black dot. An ear-piercing sound was heard, and the terrifying airflow made the surrounding swordsmen stagger and almost fall to the ground. These swordsmen were all stunned. It was as if their brains had rusted and they could not react. After 3 breaths, some of the swordsmen finally woke up. It was obvious that the powerful Thunderwing Golden Rock had escaped. Yes, the terrifying Thunderwing Golden Rock that had killed more than 20 Chi-High swordsmen had escaped. At this moment, all of the Chi High swordsmen in the sky looked at Chu Mu. Their eyes were filled with confusion and a trace of respect. With their eyesight, they couldn't clearly see what happened in that instant because the thunder-winged golden rock was too fast. Chu Mu's horizontal slash seemed ordinary, neither fast nor slow, but in reality, it was extremely fast. Otherwise, how could it have hit the thunder-winged golden rock? Although they did not see it, the 100 swordsmen understood that the thunderwing golden rock had escaped because of Chu Mu. The few drops of blood in the air and the broken claw in Chu Mu's hand were enough to prove this point. Therefore, while they were surprised and confused, they also had a trace of respect for Chu Mu. The thunderwing golden rock's shrill cry was also heard by the other 3 middle-ranked beast overlords. Even the hundreds of Chi High swordsmen and other swordsmen could hear it. They all looked up to the sky and saw the thunderwing golden rock's back as it flew away. They were all stunned. The silver gale monster wolf, mountain-splitting ape, and black mountain bull were even more surprised. Although they were intelligent, they could not understand what was happening in front of them. They did not see the collision between the thunderwing golden rock and Chu Mu, nor did they see Chu Mu's sword slash. Thus, the 3 middle-class overlords didn't understand why the thunder-winged golden rock wanted to leave. However, the 3 middle-class overlords' intelligence told them that the situation wasn't good and they already had thoughts of retreating. Especially when they saw the broken claw in Chu Mu's hand, they understood that this human probably had the ability to injure them. Immediately, the 3 mid-level overlords roared. The army of demonic beasts behind them also roared and started to move again. They madly rushed forward and launched another assault. The beast army rushed past the 3 middle-ranked beast overlords and charged towards the swordsmen without fear of death. The 3 middle-ranked beast overlords quickly retreated. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 435. The thunder-winged golden rock was too fast, it disappeared in a blink of an eye. The other 3 middle-ranked beasts were not as fast as the thunder-winged golden rock. The silver dipper demon wolf was the fastest. It also ran away quickly, its speed making it hard for the swordsmen to catch up. If the swordsmen tried their best to catch up, they might be able to catch up with the black mountain cow and the mountain-splitting ape, but it would be very difficult to kill the black mountain cow and the mountain-splitting ape. Now, the army of over 300,000 beasts attacked again. Each of the beasts had at least the strength of a middle-ranked beast. The main force was middle-ranked high-ranked beasts, tens of thousands were middle-ranked super-ranked beasts, and a few thousand of them were strong middle-ranked super-ranked beasts. Facing the charge of these strong middle-ranked beasts, especially when these middle-ranked beasts were not in a berserk state, a small number of them used their innate demon skills. The innate demon skills of the middle-ranked beasts were very powerful. Under the bombardment of cannon fire, 2 strong Chi High Realm swordsmen were killed immediately. Helplessly, the remaining 900 strong Chi High Realm swordsmen could only see the backs of the 3 middle-ranked beasts as they left. They turned their attention to the army of beasts. Thunder and fire were like dragons. Even if only a small number of middle-ranked beasts used their innate demon skills, there were still thousands of them. Every single one of them was more powerful than an Earth-level ancient sword art. Once hit, there was an 80% chance of death. Under the attack of the beast's innate demon skills, a few strong Chi High Realm swordsmen were killed. Luckily, the beast's eyes turned red again, and they went into a berserk state. Their strength and speed increased greatly, but none of them used their innate demon skills. Those who used their innate demon skills had their strength and speed decreased significantly. Even if they went into a berserk state, there was no increase in their strength. More than 100 people had died, but none of the 4 tyrant beasts had died. This was a huge blow to the 1,000-strong Chi High warriors. All of a sudden, the Chi High warriors were enraged and they vented their anger on the army of beasts. After Chu Mu took a few pills to recover his sword chi, he did not rush to attack. Instead, he stayed in the air and waited for the pills to recover his sword chi. This would take some time. With a wave of his hand, the Thunderwing Golden Rock's broken claw was stored in his spatial bracelet. Although he did not know what it was used for, it was at least a spoil of war. He took the time to look at the demon's slaughtering sword command at his waist. The number on it was more than 1,500, indicating that more than 1,500 mid-level demon beasts had died under Chu Mu's sword. It will be difficult to enter the top 10 with this result. Chu Mu frowned slightly. He did not dare to hope for the first place. After all, there were many powerful people here. Some of them had cultivated sword arts that were suitable for large-scale attack. They were very suitable for such group battles. The sword technique Forbidden Zone has already increased to 5 meters. It's impossible to increase it again in a short period of time. Next, I'll use all my strength to kill as many demonic beasts as possible. Chu Mu thought to himself. He had already recovered most of his sword chi. The effects of the medicinal pill were still in effect. It would not take long for him to recover to his peak. His body was like a shooting star as he rushed towards the place with the least amount of demonic beasts. He slashed down with the profound star sword. In a split second, a dark gold sword light fell from the sky. With a boom, over 20 demonic beasts were struck by the dark golden sword light. Their tough bodies were unable to withstand it at all. Under the full power of the rock-shaking wave sword, blood splattered everywhere, and their bodies were shattered. The number on the demon's slaughtering sword command changed quickly. With a flash of the sword light, 2 demonic beasts that were rushing towards him were killed. Chu Mu held the cruel sun sword tightly in his left hand. With both swords in his hands, he began his slaughter. When Chu Mu landed on the ground and started to fight with the demonic beasts, a line of small black dots appeared from the direction of the messy Goblin Mountain. They were quickly approaching. Not long after, the swordsman saw that it was a group of flying demonic beasts. With a quick glance, they estimated that there were at least 10,000 flying demonic beasts. The swordsmen's faces changed. Many of the Chi High Realm swordsmen used their secret flying techniques and flew into the sky to intercept the flying demonic beasts. Stone-shaking sword command. Space-splitting sword attack. Although Chu Mu did not train in any ancient sword arts that were suitable for large-scale attacks, the stone-shaking sword command and space-splitting sword attack could kill at least 10 demonic beasts, and at most 20. Soon, the number on the demon slaughtering sword command was nearing 2,000. After continuously using the stone-shaking sword command and space-splitting sword attack, Chu Mu's Sky Origin sword chi was quickly depleting. Even his spirit was being depleted. He swung both swords and cleared the area around him. He quickly took out some pills and swallowed them. Pills had pill toxins. Taking them in moderation would not cause any side effects because the human body's body was able to get rid of the pill toxins. Also, the stronger a swordsman was, the more effective they would be at getting rid of the pill toxins. This was because as their cultivation increased, their body would change and become stronger. However, taking a large amount of pills in a short period of time would cause the pill toxins to accumulate. It would be difficult to get rid of the pill toxins with just the body's body. If one could not get rid of the pill toxins in time, the side effects would appear. It would affect the purity of one's sword chi. In more serious cases, it would even cause some damage to one's meridians and organs. One would have to spend a lot of time recuperating. But at this time, he could not care so much. If he did not recover his sword chi, he would not be able to use his strength. To a swordsman, sword chi was the foundation. Everything else, such as sword intent, also had great power. However, without sword chi to support them, their power was limited. Compared to them, Chu Mu had an obvious advantage because of the Sky Wasteland sword body. The Sky Wasteland sword body had the trait of being immune to poison. Pill toxins were also a type of poison. Thus, they were instantly destroyed by the power of the Sky Wasteland sword body. No matter how many pills Chu Mu took, there would not be any side effects, unless it was a very special pill that exceeded the tolerance of the sword body. While the pills were recovering his sword chi, Chu Mu's two swords did not stop. He used basic sword arts to kill demonic beasts again and again. The speed of the profound star sword and the cruel sun sword was unbelievably fast. One could only hear a slight sound of wind being broken. The sword light of each sword was very dim. At a glance, one could only see a figure moving quickly in the dense group of demonic beasts. He used the flying swan illusory steps, causing the attacks of the demonic beasts to miss time and time again. The improvement of his sword arts allowed Chu Mu's sword speed to increase again. Originally, his sword speed was close to the speed of sound. Now, each sword speed had reached the speed of sound and was even faster. In other words, Chu Mu did not need to use the supersonic sword secret technique to make his sword speed reach the speed of sound. Although it would cause a certain burden to the body, as long as Chu Mu controlled the rhythm properly, he could unleash a terrifying power. Chu Mu had only just grasped the supersonic sword. By killing demonic beasts, he silently calculated the burden on the body and the recovery speed of the body. From this, he found the best rhythm to balance the burden and recovery. Therefore, Chu Mu's sword speed had decreased, but it was still fast. Any demonic beast that got close to him was not spared. After killing a demonic beast with one sword, a demonic beast suddenly rushed over at an extremely fast speed. Chu Mu had just killed two demonic beasts with his two swords. Without hesitation, Yi Chen strengthened his protective sword chi and activated the feathered armor. The demonic beast's sharp claws tore through both the protective sword chi and the feathered armor. The demonic beast's sharp claws quickly reached for one of Chu Mu's arms. The speed was too fast and too sudden. Chu Mu's right arm was about to be hit by the demonic beast's sharp claws. Fortunately, the protective sword chi and the feathered armor had reduced the speed of the demonic beast's sharp claws. Using the flying swan illusory steps, the demonic beast's sharp claws missed. A sword light bloomed in front of his eyes, piercing through the demonic beast's forehead. The demonic beast's attacking speed was indeed very fast when it was in a berserk state. However, no matter how fast it could not be faster than Chu Mu, because Chu Mu's sword speed had reached the speed of sound. It was normal for an Origin Realm sword artist to be able to reach or even surpass the speed of sound. However, it was extremely rare for a Chi-Hai sword artist to be able to reach the speed of sound. In order to increase the speed of one's sword attack, there were only two ways to improve it. First, the mastery of sword arts. The more profound one's sword skills were, the more one would be able to understand, and the more one would be able to understand how to make one's sword attack the fastest. Second, a strong body. If one only had enough skills but did not have a strong enough body to support it, it would only be a flash in the pan. Only when one's skills were combined with a strong enough body would one be able to achieve stability. A strong body did not mean that one's physical strength was powerful or explosive. It was a kind of balance that reached the standard in all aspects, perfectly coordinating every part of the body. For example, the mountain-splitting ape's physical strength was extremely terrifying. However, it was only one aspect that stood out the most. Its advantages were very obvious, but its weaknesses were also very obvious. Therefore, no matter what, the mountain-splitting ape's attack speed would not be able to reach the speed of sound. Unless it reached the Origin Realm or even higher, only then would it be able to reach the speed of sound. It could be said that in terms of stable sword attack speed, if Chu Mu claimed to be second in the Chi-Hai realm, no one would dare to claim to be first. After recovering his sword chi, Chu Mu once again used the rock-shaking wave sword and the sky-splitting sword attack to kill the demonic beasts again and again. There were too many demonic beasts, and even if Chu Mu kept on using the flying swan illusory steps, He was still hit by the demonic beasts a few times. Most of the time, it was the protective sword chi and the feathery pattern armor that were broken through. Chu Mu relied on his super-fast reaction speed to quickly dodge the attacks and counterattack. However, there was still one time when Chu Mu's leg was scratched by the sharp claws of a demonic beast. After the desolation transformation, the toughness of his skin was amazing. The sharp claws of the demonic beast only left a small wound on his leg. It did not cause any real damage, and the wound healed in less than 3 breaths of time. With such a body type, other than the mid-level demonic beast overlords and demonic beasts that were stronger than mid-level demonic beasts, what other demonic beasts could fight against Chu Mu? The other sword artists had already used the time when the 4 mid-level demonic beast overlords were fighting against the 900-strong Chi High Realm sword artists to recover. Now that the demonic beast army was attacking again, they once again threw themselves into the life and death battle with the demonic beast. Kill. Kill. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 436. Come on, there aren't many beasts left. Kill. 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 The beasts' roars were earth-shattering. Be it human swordsmen or beasts, all of them had gone crazy. Broken corpses were everywhere. Some of them were trampled into meat paste, and blood was flowing everywhere. It was a shocking sight. The last beast died under the swords. Some of the swordsmen were still waving their swords, and only after a few breaths did they realize that all the beasts were dead. All of the swordsmen who were still alive looked around with bloodshot eyes. They looked like people who had not slept for 10 days and 10 nights, or like murderous maniacs. That kind of crazed look was 100 times scarier than a mental patient. An ordinary person would probably suffocate to death upon seeing it. All of the living swordsmen were surrounded by strands of blood chi. Each strand was extremely cold, especially the blood sword Burning Lie's body. It was completely surrounded by the dense blood chi, and it was almost materialized. In this state, the blood sword Burning Lie's strength was a lot stronger than usual. It was extremely frightening. There was no sound, and only the howling of the bayphone could be heard. After 10 breaths of time, someone moved. He staggered towards the demon shaker city. Every time his foot landed on the ground, it would step on the ground that was as mangled as a puddle of blood. When he lifted his foot up, it would emit a patter sound that would cause one's hair to stand on end. The swords were stained with blood, and a layer of blood covered the body of the swords. Even if one used all of their strength to shake it off, they would not be able to shake it off completely. An extremely dense murderous aura was lingering in the surroundings. Every swordsman's murderous aura mixed together and shook the heaven and earth. Even the dark clouds in the sky were shattered, showing signs of dissipating. Patter-patter sounds were constantly heard. Every swordsman turned around and stepped on the ground, stepping over the corpses of the beasts and swordsmen, and walked toward the demon-shaking city. Under the ground and the corpses there were a lot of beast nuclei and spatial bracelet. It was a huge fortune. If it were any other time, the swordsmen might fight for it. But right now, no one dared to make a move. It was not that they had forgotten, but they were very tired right now. Physical, mental exhaustion. There was an indescribable vibration that came from the depths of their souls. It was their respect for the dead. Now they just wanted to rest. If he didn't have a good rest and let all his exhaustion disappear so that he could recover, he was afraid that he would be affected by the side effects of this kind of high-intensity killing. It would be easy for him to have inner demons and so on, which would be very disadvantageous to him. Covered in blood, only a few swordsmen were able to maintain a relatively clean appearance. Even so, most of their bodies were still covered in blood. For example, Chu Mu's moon-white robe was torn in many places. Almost half of it was dyed scarlet with blood, and it was wet and sticky. The city gates opened. The swordsmen who were still alive walked into the city without saying a word. As soon as they entered the city, they saw a few destroyed shops on both sides of the street. There were also some corpses on the street. A flying beast had successfully broken through the swordsman's blockade and entered the city. Luckily, a Chi high swordsman reacted quickly and chased after the beast, killing it without caring about the consequences. Otherwise, it would have caused even more destruction. The swordsmen in the Sword Chi realm and the ordinary people in the city all held their swords. When they saw the swordsman with bloodshot eyes and covered in blood and murderous aura walk in, they were all terrified and unconsciously took a few steps back. Some of them even sat down on the ground and shivered. Chu Mu returned to the Windward Inn and asked the waiter to prepare hot water and send it to the guest room. Not long after, the bathtub was filled with hot water. Then, he added a few leaves from the jade palm tree. Immediately, the fragrance of herbs filled the air. Taking off his clothes and entering the bathtub, Chu Mu sat down comfortably. He leaned his head against the edge of the bathtub and let out a sigh of relief. His entire body and mind relaxed. His arms rested on the edge of the bathtub. He wore a top-grade spatial bracelet on one hand and a top-grade spatial bracelet and a mid-grade spatial bracelet on the other hand. His eyes slowly closed and the whole world fell into darkness. He didn't want to think about anything and let the hot water soak his body, allowing his tired body to recover bit by bit in comfort. His breathing became slower and slower. Chu Mu seemed to have fallen asleep. After about 15 minutes, his eyes opened without any warning. With a wave of his hand, a broken claw appeared. It was a few times bigger than Chu Mu's hand and very heavy. Probably weighed more than 50 kilograms. The skin of this broken claw was golden yellow and smooth. However, there were some chicken claw patterns on it. It was very hard. Chu Mu took out an extreme-grade sword and lightly hacked at it. Clang! Sparks flew out as if he was hacking at steel, leaving only a faint mark. Worthy of being a mid-grade tyrant beast. Chu Mu put away his extreme-grade sword and sighed. In terms of defense, the Thunderwing Golden Rock was not as good as the mountain-splitting ape or the Black Mountain Bull. However, compared to other mid-grade super-rank beasts, it was a few times stronger. It could completely resist the sharp edge of an extreme-grade sword. Chu Mu believed that even if he used the full power of his stone-shaking wave sword, he would only be able to injure it. He wouldn't be able to cut off this claw. The power of chop iron is indeed powerful. It is at least twice as powerful as the stone-shaking wave sword. Chu Mu's mouth curved into a smile. He spoke from the bottom of his heart with a voice that only he could hear. Chop iron was the name of a new sword skill that he had created. Steel was usually used to represent toughness. Some people said that a steel-like body meant that the body was very tough and tough. A steel-like will also meant that the will was very tough and indestructible. It was named chop iron, which meant that it could cut through all toughness and was indestructible. This was the special feature of his new sword skill. At the same time, it was also Chu Mu's goal and expectation. However, chop iron was just a new skill. Although it was powerful, there was still a lot of room for improvement. Although they were all sword skills, chop iron was obviously different from the stone-shaking wave sword and the space-splitting sword. The stone-shaking wave sword and the space-splitting sword were sword skills that belonged to swordsmen. Chop iron was a sword skill that belonged to swordmasters. The stone-shaking wave sword used the stone-shaking wave sword as the foundation and merged with other parts as the flesh and soul. The space-splitting sword used the ripping concept as the foundation and merged with other parts as the flesh and soul. Chop iron was also inseparable from the sword chi concept, stone-shaking wave sword, and sword force. However, its foundation was pure swordsmanship. In this aspect, it was clearly different from the stone-shaking wave sword and the space-splitting sword. On the ancient sword continent, basic swordsmanship was compulsory. However, it was not the only choice. Swordsmen practiced basic swordsmanship to lay down a good and solid foundation for themselves. It would be convenient for them to cultivate more profound swordsmanship in the future. It would also be convenient for them to rely on their outstanding basic swordsmanship to defeat powerful enemies when they were unable to use more profound swordsmanship. No matter what, the basic swordsmanship on the ancient sword continent was only the foundation. Perhaps some people had great perseverance and willpower to persist in practicing basic swordsmanship, but they would definitely not spend too much time on it. At most, they would practice it a few times a day. Sword masters were different. They practiced basic swordsmanship from the moment they came into contact with the sword. There was only one basic swordsmanship. Thus, after thousands of years of development, the foundation of basic swordsmanship was derived from basic swordsmanship. Basic swordsmanship was also improved time and time again, becoming more efficient and powerful. Moreover, some of the improved swordsmanship leaned towards more strength or speed. No matter how it was changed, the essence was still basic swordsmanship. It had never deviated from the essence. When a swordsman's basic swordsmanship was cultivated to a certain level, that was, when he broke through to the Grandmaster realm, he would begin to create his own swordsmanship according to his own characteristics and need. A swordsman's swordsmanship was the sublimation of basic swordsmanship. It was the condensation of the essence of basic swordsmanship, and its power was far beyond that of basic swordsmanship. Even though the ancient sword continent's swordsmanship civilization was far superior to Earth's, the achievements of a swordsman in basic swordsmanship were not something swordsmen could compare with. Simply put, they were two different paths. Perhaps they would eventually reach the same goal, but no one had ever achieved it. There was no way to prove it. Ever since his basic swordsmanship reached the Grandmaster realm, Chu Mu had also thought of creating a swordsman's ultimate sword move. He had also taken action and created a shocking cloud kill. However, it was only a very basic sword move. It was nothing at all. In the future, because he had to cultivate a swordsman's swordsmanship, cultivate sword aura, comprehend sword intent, comprehend sword momentum, and so on, it took up most of his time. He also had to gain combat experience. As a result, Chu Mu could not calm down to create a swordsman's ultimate sword move properly. Every swordsmanship master would take at least a few years to create a sword move that truly belonged to him. It would take at least a few years, and at most more than a decade. They had a very deep foundation and rich experience. Compared to those swordsmanship masters, Chu Mu was too young, lacking in foundation, and not rich enough experience. However, all of this was not important. Chu Mu had a powerful soul that ordinary people could not compare to. He had monstrous comprehension and unparalleled talent in swordsmanship. Even so, Chu Mu had only truly created a swordsman's ultimate sword move, /iron. If it had not been for the monster army riot this time, it would have taken Chu Mu at least half a year or even a year to create a swordsman's ultimate sword move. At that time, the power of the sword move created would not necessarily be comparable to /iron. It could be said that /iron was a pure killing sword move that Chu Mu had an epiphany when he entered the deep state of the forbidden zone of swordsmanship. It had only one purpose: to kill. Compared to other swordsmanship masters, Chu Mu had now reached the level of swordsmanship master Deshang. The swordsmanship created by Deshang in the state of epiphany was naturally more powerful than the swordsmanship created by beginner swordsmanship masters and initial swordsmanship masters. Moreover, Chu Mu was fortunate enough to integrate everything he knew into it, causing iron slash's might to become even stronger. Sword Qi Deshang's peak rock-shaking force, more than 60% of the tearing concept, and 10% of the perfect sword force. These four types of energy seemed to have been crushed and seeped into the sword, becoming one with the sword. It was as if they had become the materials used to forge the sword. The sword seemed to have become heavier and harder, and its sharpness was even more shocking. Only then could it be invincible. It was powerful, but it also consumed a lot of energy. This was clearly different from a swordsman's swordsmanship, because a swordsman's swordsmanship attached various types of energy to the surface of the sword. The initial slash iron could cut off the claws of the thunder-winged golden roc. Chu-Mu believed that a perfected slash iron could even kill the Black Mountain Bull with its amazing defense. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidien.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 437. The power of chopping steel is indeed very strong, but its flaws are equally obvious. Chu-Mu kept the broken claw of the Thunderwing Golden Roc and closed his eyes again. His tensed body relaxed once again, and he almost sank into the hot water. Chu-Mu was very clear about the strengths and weaknesses of chopping steel, but he couldn't change it. It was fixed from the moment he created chopping steel. Next, Chu-Mu could only perfect chopping steel and increase its power, but the flaws were still there. The flaw of chopping steel was that it could only be used in close combat. The length of the arm and the length of the sword represented the attacking range of chopping steel. It couldn't be more than half an inch. Of course, the sword wind brought about by chopping steel was also very powerful. No longer thinking, Chu-Mu's breathing became more subtle and long as he fell asleep. 2 hours later, Chu-Mu woke up. The hot water had already turned into cold water. He felt refreshed and energized. The tiredness brought about by the high-intensity battle was washed away like dirt. Heaven and earth were so clear. As he got up, the sound of water splashing could be heard. Countless water droplets flowed from his body into the bathtub, creating countless ripples. Chu-Mu gently jumped out of the bathtub without causing any splash. He stretched his body and put on new clothes. Chu-Mu first went to Ochenglua's room. Ochenglua was shocked by Chu-Mu's murderous aura that had yet to dissipate. He was so weak that he almost suffocated. Chu-Mu had no choice but to control it with all his might. However, the murderous aura was too dense, and it still affected Ochenglua greatly. Helpless, Chu-Mu only said a few words before leaving Ochenglua's room. Returning to his room, he took out a book and started reading. Balance between work and rest was the right way to go. As for the matters outside, there would naturally be someone to take care of it. He and the other swordsmen only needed to defend the Demon Shaker City and repel or kill the demonic beast army. Just as Chu-Mu expected, the Demon Shaker City was very busy. After the demonic beast army was slaughtered, the battle between the 5 astral realm experts and the demonic beasts ended quickly. Only the 5 astral realm experts knew the result of the battle. No matter what, the million-strong demonic beast army that was rarely seen in hundreds of years had failed, and the million-strong demonic beasts had all been killed. The demonic beasts of the Chaosiao Mountains had suffered great losses. This was great news for the people of Chaosiao City. The only bad news was that the swordsmen had suffered heavy losses. The people in the Demon Shaker City were busy rebuilding their shops, but that was a small matter. The cleanup of the battlefield outside the Demon Shaker City was of utmost importance. Collecting the corpses of the dead swordsmen, collecting the corpses of the demonic beasts, the swords and spatial bracelets of the dead swordsmen, the demonic cores of the demonic beasts, and so on was a huge workload. Almost all the Sword Chi swordsmen and ordinary people in the Demon Shaker City were mobilized. When they saw the Azura slaughter field that was like a meat grinder, their expressions changed drastically. They vomited non-stop, and some even vomited until they felt weak all over. Some even fainted. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. Chu-Mu had been staying in the inn all this time, and his meals were all delivered by the waiter. On the first day, Chu-Mu did not think about anything. He just rested and read, allowing himself to be in a relatively calm state. On the second day, Chu-Mu began to think about the battle with the demonic beast army. Every time he attacked with his sword, every time he killed, Chu-Mu felt as though he had returned to that high-intensity slaughter. The killing intent that had yet to dissipate from his body surged and filled the entire room. The light in the room dimmed, as though the day had turned into dusk. The killing intent was frighteningly sharp and cold. It leaked out slightly from the room, causing the waiter who occasionally walked past to feel weak all over. On the third day, Chu Mu was still thinking about it. However, the focus of his thinking had shifted from the battle with the demonic beasts to the various comprehensions he had gained in the midst of life and death. This was especially true for the short battle with the Thunderwing Golden Rock and the moment when he used the Iron Cleave sword technique. Most of the other swordsmen were the same. This kind of battle of life and death was a huge harvest for their path as a swordsman. It was a kind of wealth. Therefore, they were all thinking about it after a good rest. They wanted to convert the insights they gained from the battle into their own gains, increasing their realm and strength. At the same time, the injured swordsmen were also recuperating. As for those who had lost an arm or a leg, there was no way for them to grow back. On the fourth day, the swordsmen were notified to gather at the plaza beside the city lord's mansion. The top 10 of the Demon Slaughter leaderboard would be given out by the 5 Origin Realm expert. Opening the door, Chu Mu still had the killing intent on his body. However, it was 10 times weaker than 3 days ago. He went to O Chengluo's room, intending to bring O Chengluo to broaden his horizons. The killing intent had reached a level where O Chengluo could resist it. Chu Mu also told O Chengluo that this time, he was only bringing him to broaden his horizons. He should be able to see the people from the Red Robes Association, but no matter what, he should not be impulsive. To the current Red Robes Association, O Chengluo was just an ant that could be crushed with a single finger. Chu Mu promised Old Master O that he would take care of O Chengluo, but that didn't mean that he would be O Chengluo's nanny. Therefore, O Chengluo had to be responsible for himself. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to achieve anything. When Chu Mu brought O Chengluo to the plaza, there was already a large number of swordsmen gathered there. Every swordsman had more or less killing intent, which was left behind from the desperate battle 3 days ago. It wouldn't dissipate so quickly. With so many swordsmen gathered, streams of killing intent gathered and soared into the sky. O Chengluo's face turned pale, and his legs went soft. He almost fell down, but he held on with his willpower. Blood was seeping out from the roots of his teeth. Seeing that O Chengluo was about to collapse, Chu Mu released his aura to isolate the killing intent. Only then did O Chengluo let out a sigh of relief. 5 Origin Realm experts. After a short moment of silence, one of the Origin Realm experts spoke. His voice was deep and heavy with a trace of sadness. He summarized the battle with the demon army and expressed his condolences to the swordsmen who had sacrificed their lives to resist the invasion of the demon army. Almost all the swordsmen were affected, and couldn't help but feel sorrow from the bottom of their hearts. 120,000. 120,000 swordsmen had died under the claws of the demonic beasts. This was equivalent to reducing the strength of the demon-shaking city by 60 to 70%. Chu Mu also knew that the sacrifice this time was huge, but he didn't expect it to be 120,000. When he heard this number, he was extremely shocked. Their sacrifice resulted in the destruction of the million demonic beast army. Because of your sacrifice, we managed to defend the demon-shaking city. The Origin Realm swordsman's tone changed from low to excited, full of encouragement. It pulled the swordsmen out of their sorrow, and their minds were shaken. They couldn't wait to pull out their swords and fight the demonic beasts for another 3 days and 3 nights. Next, it was time for the main event. Of the 1,000 strongest Chi High swordsmen who participated in the demon slaughtering rankings, 123 had died. They had no fate with the demon slaughtering rankings. Someone started to record the numbers on the demon slaughtering sword tokens for the 877 Chi High swordsmen who survived. The unrelated swordsmen automatically spread out and stood around, waiting for the result. After half an hour, the counting was completed, and the results were announced. Everyone, including Chu Mu, held their breaths. Many swordsmen came here not only to gain experience, but also to gain more rewards. Now it was time to reap the rewards. Let's start with the 10th place. The name list fell into the hands of the 5 Origin Realm swordsmen, and one of them announced. 10th place, Li Xiaoxiao, 1,630 demonic beasts killed. Li Xiaoxiao was a female swordsman. After hearing her name, she was shocked at first, but then her face was filled with joy. Many of the Qi High swordsmen sighed after hearing the number of demonic beasts killed by Li Xiaoxiao. Their faces were filled with disappointment, because they knew that the number on their tokens was less than 1,630. This meant that they had no fate with the top 10, and the rich rewards had nothing to do with them. The swordsmen who had killed more than 1,630 demonic beasts all let out a sigh of relief, but then they became nervous again. They were sure that they could enter the top 10 and get the rewards, but the rewards for each rank were quite different. The higher the rank, the more rewards they would get. They were not sure what rank they would be placed in. 9th place, Fang Hao, 1,742 demonic beasts killed. Congratulations, Senior Brother Fang. Senior Brother Fang is so powerful. A group of swordsmen in black robes complimented. Chumu was slightly surprised. This Fang Hao was the core disciple of the Moro sword sect who had threatened him before. It seemed that he was indeed very powerful. 8th place, Ji Tianshu, 1,800 demonic beasts killed. 7th place, Yin Lai, 1,907 demonic beasts killed. 6th place, Fun Lai, 2,700 demonic beasts killed. 5th place, Tu Kong, 2,100 demonic beasts killed. 4th place, Gui Wu, 2,200 demonic beasts killed. 3rd place, Chu Mu, 2,345 demonic beasts killed. After the announcement, O Chengluo looked at Chu Mu with admiration. Tu Kong, Fun Lai, and the others all looked over, their battle intent rising. Chu Mu himself was also surprised. He did not dare to hope for the first place, and Chu Mu did not even think about how many spots he would get. He just wanted to enter the top 10. He did not expect that not only would he enter the top 10, but he would also reach the 3rd place. This was somewhat unexpected. 2nd place, Tang Yen, 2,500 demonic beasts killed. 1st place, Yen Qilong, 2,830 demonic beasts killed. Once the announcement of the 1st place was made, it immediately shocked everyone. The difference between the number of demonic beasts killed from the 2nd place to the 10th place was not even 200, but the difference between the 2nd place and the 1st place was more than 300. All of a sudden, all the swordsmen's eyes fell on Yen Qilong. He was in his early 30s and had an ordinary appearance. Only his fiery red hair left a deep impression. Chu Mu guessed that this person might already have the strength of a sword master. Congratulations to the 10 of you for entering the top 10 of the Demon Slaughter leaderboard. This is the reward you deserve. After the announcement, 10 mid-grade spatial bracelets flew towards Chu Mu and the others, and were caught by them. This time, the demon-shaking city was defended because of your efforts. Therefore, the other swordsmen on the Demon Slaughter leaderboard will each receive 10,000 mid-grade spiritual stones. The other Sea of Qi Realm swordsmen will each receive 1,000 mid-grade spiritual stones. The Qi Realm swordsmen will each receive 1,000 low-grade spiritual stones. One of the primary realm swordsmen announced. It was better than nothing. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 438. Chu Mu, I did not expect you to become so strong. A deep voice came from behind Chu Mu, carrying with it an overbearing aura. Turning around, Chu Mu was surprised at first, then he smiled. I also did not expect you to reach the peak of the Qi High Realm. If you can reach the peak of the Qi High Realm, why can't I reach the peak of the Qi High Realm? Huang Fu Songyue's voice was deep, but her eyes were shining brightly. In the past, you were not as strong as me, but now you have surpassed me. However, I will surpass you in the future, and then I will let you taste the feeling of being defeated by my sword. Anytime. Chu-Mu let out a carefree laugh and said. This conversation was neither friendly nor hostile, so it ended here. Huang Fu Songyue turned around and left. Let's go. Chu-Mu said to Oching Luo, who was still in a daze. The two walked along the street towards the Windward Inn. The demon beast rampage had ended, and the surviving foreign sword artists were preparing to leave with their rewards. The demon-shaking city had entered an unprecedented period of depression, and only by surviving this period of depression could the demon-shaking city become strong again. However, no one knew how long this period of depression would last. Chu-Mu could not wait to return to his room. Closing the door, he took out a mid-rank space bracelet from his chest. All the rewards are in here, Chu-Mu said to himself. He calmed down his breathing and started to drip his blood on the bracelet to recognize it as its owner. This mid-rank space bracelet did not have an owner. After easily recognizing it as its owner, Chu-Mu sent his mind into it to check. After 10 breaths of time, Chu-Mu had finished checking, and everything in the mid-rank space bracelet was clear to him. Although he already knew about the rewards, he was still surprised when he got his hands on them. With a wave of his hand, mahogany boxes of different sizes appeared on the floor of the room. Chu-Mu sent out sword beams to open each of the chests. Immediately, thick Yao energy and spiritual energy spread out, filling the entire room and spreading outside. First, there were the demon nuclei. 1,000 mid-grade transcendent demon nuclei, 3,000 mid-grade high-grade demon nuclei, 5,000 mid-grade demon nuclei, and 10,000 low-grade mid-grade demon nuclei. These demon nuclei took up 4 boxes. Next were the spirit stones, all of which were mid-grade spirit stones. There were a total of 80,000 spirit stones, which was equivalent to 8 large mahogany chests. Chu-Mu was pleasantly surprised. Before the invasion of the monster beast army, there was no mention of monster cores as a reward. The reward for third place was only 70,000 mid-grade spirit stones, not 80,000. The additional 10,000 should have been added later. Every powerful swordsman who participated in the demon slaughter rankings would receive an additional 10,000 mid-grade spirit stones as a reward. 877. Everyone received an additional 10,000 mid-grade spirit stones, which is 8,770,000 mid-grade spirit stones. In addition to what the top 10 received and what the other swordsmen received, the total cost is over 10 million mid-grade spirit stones. This number made Chu-Mu suck in a breath of cold air. After thinking about it carefully, 10 million mid-grade spirit stones should be a small matter for 5 primary realm swordsmen. Moreover, 10 million mid-grade spirit stones wouldn't necessarily be paid by them. The most important thing was the dead swordsman's weapons and wealth, as well as the million demonic beast cores. These things all belonged to the Demon Shaker City. To put it bluntly, the rewards that Chu-Mu and the others received were actually equivalent to the wealth of the dead swordsman, as well as the materials and cores of the demonic beasts that were slain. In the end, it was the Demon Shaker City that profited. Apart from the demon nuclei and mid-grade spirit stones, there was also a book with a few words written on the cover. UNG Insights. The name was very simple, but it contained an extraordinary meaning, which made Chu-Mu's heart skip a beat. He quickly flipped through it and immediately knew that this was an UNG realm martial artist's insight. It started from the sword chi stage and ended when he broke through to the UNG realm. This book contained insights on basic sword arts, insights on ancient sword arts, insights on the use of mental states, insights on sword force, and insights on life and death battles. There were 5 chapters in total, and each chapter was not long. The narration was short and easy to understand. It started from the basics and went from the basics to the basic. The only flaw was that it was not deep enough. But for a Chi High Realm swordsman, it was enough. Comprehending this book would save a lot of time and would be of great help to a Chi High Realm swordsman. Even if you had the money, you wouldn't be able to buy it. Next was a small jade box. At the bottom of the jade box was a small piece of paper with 3 words written on it. It was the name of the item in the jade box. Mind-raising Dan. Back when Chu-Mu was in the inner house, he had obtained a mind-refining Dan. Chu-Mu was very clear about its effects. The mind-raising Dan was 1 grade higher than the mind-refining Dan. It was equivalent to upgrading the mind-refining Dan. Chu-Mu took a deep breath. His eyes were filled with surprise. The mind-refining Dan was suitable for the small success stage of mental states, while the mind-raising Dan was suitable for Deshang's mental state. With this mind-raising Dan, Chu-Mu's tearing mentality could be increased to at least 70%. If he could increase his cloud mentality, it could be increased to at least 80% or even higher. Besides that, there were 3 gourds filled with pellet. There were 20 pellets in each gourd. They were chi-linking pellets, life-returning pellets, and wound-healing pellet. Compared to the mind-raising Dan, the total value of these 3 gourds of pellets was not as high. But each gourd would still cost a few thousand mid-rank soul stones. The chi-linking pellet was used to recover sword chi. 1 pellet was enough to completely recover all of Deshang's chi high realm swordsman's sword chi. The life-returning pellet was used to heal internal injuries, and the wound-healing pellet was used to heal external injuries. These were the rewards for Chu-Mu for getting the 3rd place on the beast slaughter ranking. There were 5 things in total, and they could be described as generous. There was a knock on the door. Chu-Mu put all of these things into his upper-rank spatial bracelet. He flicked out his sword chi and opened the door. There was a middle-aged man standing outside the door. He looked like he was in his 40s. His hair was white, and he gave off a gentle and refined feeling. There was a smile on his face. Chu-Mu realized that he could not see through this man's cultivation. He could only see it with his eyes. Once he closed his eyes, he could not feel it. My name is Marulong. I am the owner of the Windward Inn. The middle-aged man smiled and walked into the room naturally. He sat down on a chair not far from Chu-Mu. Chu-Mu was shocked. One of the top 5 primary realm swordsmen of the demon-shaking city had come to see him personally. What was his intention? You don't have to worry. I have no ill intentions towards you. Marulong kept a gentle smile on his face, which made Chu-Mu feel like he was bathing in a spring breeze. I have 3 things to tell you. Sir, please speak. Chu-Mu said. Being in primary realm swordsman represented an achievement. It was the goal of many swordsmen. At the same time, it was also a sign that one had truly stepped onto the path of the sword. Therefore, they had a common name, Sir. First, I want to take you as my disciple. I don't know if you are willing. Marulong said very directly. Thank you for your kindness, sir. However, Chu-Mu already has a master. Chu-Mu was stunned at first, but then he stood up and saluted with a sword. He said seriously, Pretend I didn't say the first thing. The second thing is that you cut off one of the Thunder Wing Golden Rock's claws and forced it to retreat. You scared off the other 3 mid-rank demonic beast overlords and reduced the swordsman's losses. You have contributed a lot. Marulong spoke frankly. He wasn't angry at Chu-Mu's rejection, because he didn't have any hope for the first thing. However, the ranking of the beast slaughter leaderboard is based on the number of demonic beasts killed. Even if we think you can get the first place, it is useless. Chu-Mu nodded. He didn't care about this point. Since he was willing to accept the beast slaughter sword command, it meant that he was willing to follow the rules of the beast slaughter leaderboard. If you didn't cut off one of the Thunderwing Golden Rock's claws and force it to retreat, it would be hard to say if the beast slaughter leaderboard could hold on. Even if it did, the losses would be worse than now. Therefore, after some discussion, we have decided to give you something. As he spoke, a sheathed longsword appeared in Marulong's hand. He pulled it out with a bit of force. The coldness and sharpness of the sword made Chu-Mu shiver. He squinted his eyes and used the sword observation technique to take a closer look. This was a top-quality sword. It was purple in color, with black patterns spreading out like a dragon. The sword hilt was like a bamboo joint, and the sword head was like a sharp spike at the top of a tower. It flickered with a cold light. The sword guard was a simple oval shape. The blade was 2 fingers wide and 3 feet long. It gradually narrowed from the guard to the tip, until it was only 1.5 fingers wide. The blade was thinner than a regular sword, and the blade was incomparably sharp. The tip of the sword was astonishingly sharp and slightly shiny. It made Chu Mu's eyes hurt a little. The spine of the sword was like a straight golden thread. There was a blood groove on both sides. Imagine, if such a sword pierced into a human or demonic beast's body, a large amount of blood would flow out from the blood groove. How shocking would that be? The Beast Slaughter Sword. Marulong said its name, as well as its origin and characteristics. It was a top-quality sword with a simple appearance. It was superior to the Profound Star Sword. Even the gold-shattering Sword Hero, Mad Dragon Sword Hero's Extreme Edge Sword and Mad Dragon Sword couldn't compare. It was rumored that the Beast Slaughter Sword was a replica of the Beast Slaughter Sword. The Beast Slaughter Sword was a terrifying existence that surpassed top-quality swords. It had slaughtered countless demonic beasts and beasts. It had a terrifying lethality and deterrence to both demonic beasts and demonic beasts. The Beast Slaughter Sword couldn't increase the power of any sword arts, nor could it increase the speed of the sword. It also couldn't increase the attack power of the sword. It only had 2 characteristics. First, its hardness and toughness were extraordinary. It was even stronger than top-quality swords and infinitely close to a royal-grade sword. Second, it could break through astral barriers. It could easily break through protective sword auras, demonic astral barriers, and artifact armors. Moreover, the sword tip and blade were astonishingly sharp. If there was an atmospheric Sea Realm swordsman wielding the Beast Slaughter Sword, he might be able to injure the Black Mountain Bull. Such a top-quality sword was extremely rare and valuable. If Chu Mu hadn't cut off one of the thunder-winged Golden Rock's claws and forced it to retreat, causing the other 3 mid-level demonic beast overlords to retreat, Marulong wouldn't have given it to Chu Mu. Swordsmen loved swords. After receiving it, Chu Mu couldn't bear to put it down. The sword hilt was very comfortable in his hand, as if it was tailor-made for him. Third, it's about the conflict between you and the Red Dress Association. Marulong saw that Chu Mu didn't reject the Beast Slaughter Sword and the look in Chu Mu's eyes when he looked at the Beast Slaughter Sword. He smiled and continued, "You have contributed greatly to the Demon Shaker City. You are young and powerful, and your future achievements will be extraordinary. Therefore, I was entrusted to mediate the conflict between you and the Red Dress Association. The Red Dress Association is willing to pay 50,000 mid-grade spiritual stones as an apology." After he finished speaking, Marulong looked at Chu Mu and waited for Chu Mu's reply. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 439. All right. Chu Mu gave it some thought and agreed to Marulong's mediation. Originally, Chu Mu did not plan to deal with the Red Men's Association and left it to O Chengluo. Regardless of whether he could successfully take revenge on the Red Men's Association, he would at least have a clear goal. Previously, he had rejected Marulong's first request and embarrassed him. If he rejected him again, it was inevitable that he would lose face and become angry out of shame. Offending an original realm swordsman for no reason was not something to be happy about. Very good. Marulong smiled as 5 mid-grade bronze spirit stone cards appeared in his hand and handed them to Chu Mu. A mid-grade bronze spirit stone card represented 10,000 mid-grade spirit stones. Then, the two chatted for a while before Marulong stood up and left. After all, between a Chi-Si swordsman and an original realm swordsman, there was a huge difference in age, experience, and strength. It was like an old man who had experienced the vicissitudes of life and a hot-blooded youth who had just made his debut. It was quite difficult for the two to find a common topic to discuss. After Ma Rulong left, Chu Mu flicked his sword chi to close the door and pulled out the monster-slaying sword. Demon-slaying sword's sword tip and blade were extremely thin and sharp. It constantly emitted strands of white light. The white light was extremely dazzling and Chu Mu had no choice but to squint his eyes to feel better. With a light wave, the monster-slaying sword made a slight sound of breaking the wind and left a faint trace in the air. The trace was thinner than a strand of hair. Chu Mu took out another top-grade upper-grade sword and held it in his left hand. He raised the monster-slaying sword with his right hand and chopped down without injecting any sword chi or mental state. It was like a flash of lightning. With an obscure sound, the top-grade upper-grade sword was cut in half and fell to the ground. The cut was as smooth as a mirror. Although a peak high-grade sword was not as good as an extreme-grade sword, it was very close to an ordinary extreme-grade sword. Under normal circumstances, an ordinary extreme-grade sword could at most leave a small mark on a peak high-grade sword. Even some peak high-grade swords could not break a peak high-grade sword in one strike. Good sword. Chu Mu tossed the high-grade sword aside and gently ran his finger across the blade of the demon-slaying sword. The cold touch seemed to freeze his finger. Chu Mu sighed softly. His eyes were filled with intoxication. He didn't feel the coldness at all. His finger gently touched the tip of the sword. Swordsmen loved their swords, and so did swordmasters, especially good swords. For Chu Mu, who practiced the sword observation technique, the demon-slaying sword was the best sword he had ever seen. He loved it so much that he couldn't put it down. If the monster-slaying sword is like this, then what about the monster-slaying sword? A thought suddenly flashed through Chu Mu's mind. He couldn't wait to see the monster-slaying sword. Unfortunately, he couldn't find it. Sheathing the sword, Chu Mu stored the demon-slaying sword in his spatial bracelet. With the demon-slaying sword, Chu Mu's attack power increased again. It could be said that Chu Mu's goal of training in the outside world had been achieved. Staying here would not be of much help. Immediately, he thought of leaving Demon Shaker City. The million-strong monster army of Demon Shaker Mountain had been completely wiped out. According to Ma Rulong and the others' estimates, there would not be another monster uprising for at least 100 years. The number of monsters in Demon Shaker Mountain was unprecedentedly low. With Chu Mu's current strength, mid-level monsters were no match for him. Mid-level overlords were too strong. In a one-on-one fight, Chu Mu had no chance of winning, even if he had the demon-slaying sword. As for high-level monsters, there was no need to even mention them. First, I'll take the Rising Will Pill and raise my tearing concept to Deshang. After my strength has increased, I'll take care of everything and leave Demon Shaker City for the border city. Chu Mu thought to himself. He took out the jade box containing the Rising Will Pill from his spatial bracelet. It was nighttime, so no one would come to disturb him. Chu Mu adjusted his breathing. After adjusting his essence, chi, and spirit to the best state, he opened the jade box and took out the Rising Will Pill. The Rising Will Pill was the size of a longan fruit. Its color was golden and round. A faint halo flashed through it. A wisp of fragrance filled the air. It was impossible to describe what kind of fragrance it was. Just smelling it made one feel refreshed. Swallowing the Rising Will Pill, it immediately dissolved into a clear stream that flowed through his meridians and into his mind, entering his spiritual world. Chu Mu only felt that his mind had been strengthened and magnified a few times. It had never been so clear before. Even if he did not focus on it, he could still feel all kinds of enlightenment. Every second was precious. Chu Mu took this opportunity to focus on the dark golden sword ray in his mental world and comprehend it. Cutting, sharpness, all kinds of characteristics of the tearing concept appeared in Chu Mu's mind one by one. Chu Mu continued to deepen his understanding of it. Chu Mu's body started to emit a sharp aura. Strands of dark golden light that were as thin as hair started to appear and wrap around his body, as if they were going to tear the space apart. Such a sharp power of the concept. It is a mutated concept, even more terrifying than the cutting concept. In the room on the highest floor of the Windward Inn, Marulong's face was full of surprise as he mumbled to himself. Soon after, Marulong secretly smiled and shook his head. At the age of 20, he has already comprehended a mutated concept that is even more powerful than the cutting concept. His sword aura has reached perfection, and his cultivation has reached the initial Qi high realm. He can even injure a mid-level tyrant beast. Genius, a true genius. It will not be hard for him to reach the origin realm. How could such a genius not have a master? I have been too reckless. In fact, Chu Mu did not have a master on the ancient sword continent other than the one who taught him basic sword arts on Earth. Everything he had was obtained through his own hard work. If it were someone else, they would definitely be willing to take an Origin Realm Master as their master. Especially if it was an Origin Realm Master who took the initiative to ask, they would definitely be overjoyed. Unfortunately, Chu Mu was Chu Mu. In his eyes, an Origin Realm Master was a powerful swordsman, not a powerful warrior. A powerful swordsman and a powerful warrior were two different concepts. For Chu Mu, the Origin Realm was just a realm that he would definitely reach. He had complete confidence in it. Therefore, when many people were in awe and even worshipping an Origin Realm Master, Chu Mu's heart was filled with excitement and battle intent even though he knew that he would not be able to block even one sword chi from an Origin Realm swordsman. People like Ferocious Sword Void Slaughterer only had respect for Origin Realm swordsmen, not worship them. One's mentality determined one's achievement. Those who dared to have a battle intent towards an Origin Realm swordsman would definitely have great achievements in the future. Even if they did not die halfway, they would still be able to reach the Origin Realm. However, those who only worshipped an Origin Realm Master would find it extremely difficult to break through to the Origin Realm. Even if they were lucky enough to break through, they would only be able to reach the Origin Realm for the rest of their lives. Chu Mu had his own path, a path where both swordsman and swordsman coexisted. He was the only one on this path, and there was no one to guide him. Plus, he was extremely ambitious. The Origin Realm was only a goal in his heart, and he had bigger goals in the future. If Marulong knew about Chu Mu's thoughts, he would definitely bitterly smile. Time slowly passed, and the night became as dark as water. Originally, one could still hear the roars of beasts coming from the Chaoyao mountain, but now it was extremely quiet. Chu Mu's body was surrounded by strands of dark gold. More and more of them appeared, indicating that his understanding of the concept of tearing was gradually deepening. The night went by silently. The sun rose into the sky, shining with a golden light. A new day had arrived, full of vitality. The dark gold light around Chu Mu's body completely disappeared. He opened his eyes, revealing his dark gold pupils that were extremely sharp. His gaze seemed to be able to tear through everything. After one night, the medicinal effect of the will-increasing pill disappeared, and Chu Mu's understanding of the concept of tearing had come to an end. 70%. Exhaling, Chu Mu said softly. The dark gold in his pupils faded and disappeared, returning to a deep black. 70% of the concept of tearing meant that he had just entered the Deshang realm. In terms of power, he had reached 100% of the normal concept. Whether it was the stone-shaking wave sword, the sky-splitting sword, or the iron-chopping sword, their power had all increased because of the improvement of the concept of tearing. Next, Chu Mu took out mid-grade spirit stones and started to cultivate the Heaven Origin Sword Chi, sword arts, and so on. When it was close to noon, there was a knock on the door of the guest room. It was the waiter who brought in the food and a letter. Chu Mu opened the letter and read it, frowning slightly. The letter was written by Fong Hao, and the content was to ask Chu Mu to come to the Demon Shaker City 10 miles away from the city to settle their grudges before this evening. At the end of the letter, it also stated that if Chu Mu did not agree, They would continue to stay in the city and keep an eye on Chu Mu. Once Chu Mu left the city, they would follow up and take action. All right. Crumpling the letter into a ball and throwing it into the trash can, Chu Mu enjoyed the delicious meal in peace. There were still a few hours before evening, and there was plenty of time. Chu Mu was not in a hurry at all. He agreed with Feng Hao's suggestion, and it was time to settle their grudges. Part of the meal was demonic beast meat, which contained powerful energy and was beneficial to the body. With millions of demonic beasts dead, at least half of the corpses were collected, and the edible parts were cut and processed. Now there was no shortage of meat in the entire Demon Shaker city. For ordinary people and sword chi cultivators, this was good news, as it could strengthen their bodies and increase their potential. Their sword chi cultivation speed would also increase, and they would enter the chi transformation realm earlier. After finishing the meal, Chu Mu placed the plate outside the door, closed the door, and went downstairs. Most of the tables in the lobby of the inn were empty, and only a small part of the tables were occupied by swordsmen. It was not full either, which was a big difference from the past. Lord Chu. When someone saw Chu Mu, he immediately stood up and saluted with his sword. The others also quickly stood up with a respectful expression. This time, the millions of demonic beasts had made Chu Mu famous, and he was truly recognized by the swordsmen of the Demon Shaker city. They felt respect for him from the bottom of their hearts. Chu Mu smiled and nodded. He walked out of the inn and walked along the street towards the outside of the city. As he walked, he suddenly became vigilant and subconsciously took a step back. A sharp sword light silently stabbed at him from the side. Chu Mu pulled out his sword to counterattack, but when his sword missed, another sword light slashed at him from behind. This sword light was light and subtle, and it was hard to detect. It was unpredictable and full of strangeness, and it would often appear from unimaginable angles, making it impossible to guard against. However, the sword light did not have any killing intent. Chu Mu counterattacked with his sword, and each of his sword accurately blocked the sword light's attack, causing it to fail. Your swordsmanship is indeed very powerful. A hoarse voice came and then disappeared. Chu Mu vaguely saw a figure walking away. Your swordsmanship is also very powerful. Chu Mu smiled and said softly as he sheathed his sword. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 440. Demon Sword Ghost Mist, you really live up to your name. Chu Mu muttered to himself as he strode towards the city gate. The person who suddenly attacked just now, although he didn't reveal his identity, from his sword technique and his retreating figure, Chu Mu was sure that he was the demon sword Ghost Fog, whose whereabouts were the most unpredictable. The reason why he did not show any killing intent was because he wanted to test Chu Mu's swordsmanship. As for why he wanted to test Chu Mu, the reason was simple. Chu Mu had used his swordsmanship to kill Broken Sword Sunsets. Broken Sword was known as the #1 swordsmanship in Monster Shaker City, while Demon Sword was #1. Since Chu Mu could kill Broken Sword Sunsets with his swordsmanship, some people thought that his swordsmanship was comparable to Demon Sword Ghost Mist. The results showed that Chu Mu's swordsmanship was indeed unfathomable. Ghost Mist was not confident that he could defeat Chu Mu in swordsmanship. There was also no enmity between them, so the matter was left unsettled. As soon as he walked out of Monster Shaker City, the dark red ground was even darker than before. It was almost black. A thick smell of blood floated in the air. Countless cold, killing intent lingered on the ground. Even the scorching sun could not help it. This was because a fierce battle had happened here a few days ago. It was an Azura killing field. However, other than the almost black ground, there were no broken limbs to be seen. Everything had been cleaned up by the people of Monster Shaker City. It was hard to imagine the fierce battle that happened a few days ago. Without using any movement techniques, Chu Mu paced around the battlefield that was once a battlefield. He could feel the cold, killing intent condensing in the air. It was as if he could see demon beasts charging towards him, and swordsmen waving their swords in a life-and-death battle with the demon beasts. These were all illusions. However, those with weak willpower would be affected and go crazy. Moreover, if the killing intent did not dissipate after a long time, something bad might happen. However, this was not something that Chu Mu should be worried about. He believed that the 5 venerables of Monster Shaker City would understand and know how to deal with it. Walking for 10 miles would take some time. When Chu Mu arrived, there were already more than 10 black-robed swordsmen gathered here. They were all core disciples of the Moro Sword Sect. Originally, the Moro Sword Sect had more than 20 core disciples, but some of them had died under the attack of the demonic beast army, leaving only 15. As soon as Chu Mu arrived, the 15 black-robed swordsmen's gazes all landed on Chu Mu's body. Every one of them flashed with an incomparably sharp light. Their leader, Fong Hao, strode over. "Very good. Since you are willing to settle your grudges, it will save us a lot of trouble." Fong Hao's expression was cold and harsh as he directly drew his sword and pointed it at Chu Mu. His footsteps suddenly accelerated as he rapidly approached. The tip of his sword trembled slightly as rays of sword light shot out like a torrential rain. Chu Mu's figure flashed as he shuttled through the rain, dodging the sword beams. He held the demon-slaying sword in his left hand. Fong Hao's speed was extremely fast. He was like a bolt of lightning tearing through the air. He stabbed out with his extreme rank sword and performed his ancient sword art. The sword light exploded like thousands of lightning bolts. Chu Mu could only see lightning bolts in front of his eyes. They passed through the air and touched his skin, causing his skin to feel numb. 10,000 lightning breaking sky. Senior brother Fong wants to kill him with one sword attack. The black-robed swordsmen were all shocked. The 10,000 lightning-breaking sky was the most powerful Earth Realm ancient sword art that Fong Hao had trained. It was extremely terrifying. Using the flying swan illusionary steps, Fong Hao's body was constantly changing. It was as if he was standing still, but at the same time, it was also as if he was dashing forward at an extremely fast speed. It was hard to tell. Every single lightning bolt contained a powerful force that could easily kill a sword warrior of the Qi High Realm. Hundreds of lightning bolts were densely packed together like pythons coming out of their caves. Chu Mu squinted his eyes and his pupils contracted. Hundreds of lightning bolts were reflected in his eyes. The trajectory of each lightning bolt was blurry and hard to tell. Every single lightning bolt brought him great pressure, as if it wanted to shatter him into pieces. Under this pressure, Chu Mu focused all of his attention and cleared away all of his distracting thoughts. His mind went blank and everything around him seemed to disappear. All he could see were the powerful lightning bolts in front of him. Hyper-focus. The powerful soul power and the pressure from the outside world made Chu Mu enter the hyper-focus state again. The hundreds of blurry lightning bolts suddenly became clear. Chu Mu used his movement art and jumped through the hundreds of lightning bolts, quickly approaching Fong Hao. In the eyes of the other black-robed swordsman, Chu Mu did not move at all. He was just waiting for the lightning bolts to break the sky and kill him. But in the next moment, Chu Mu's body disappeared. Only when they looked again did they realize that he had already passed through the lightning bolts and was quickly approaching Fong Hao. Fong Hao was also shocked. He changed his sword attack and the hundreds of lightning bolts suddenly exploded into countless lightning bolts. The body of the sword seemed to have a suction force. The surrounding lightning bolts were all sucked into the body of the sword. The heaven and earth chi were all attached to the sword as well. In the blink of an eye, the body of the sword was covered with horrifying electric arcs that were jumping crazily, releasing a shocking destructive force. Chu Mu rushed out of the lightning zone and appeared in front of Fong Hao. Fong Hao's eyes shot out cold electricity. His pupils seemed to have been struck by lightning. He raised his sword and locked on to Chu Mu. This sword's momentum was not as powerful as the thousands of lightning bolts breaking the sky, but it made Chu Mu's heart palpitate. The power was even more powerful. The protective sword chi was directly shattered by the powerful sword pressure. His black hair danced wildly in the wind. The powerful sword pressure made it difficult for Chu Mu to breathe. In the hyper-focus state, the trajectory of Fang Hao's sword was clearly perceived by Chu Mu. Its speed, angle, and everything else appeared in Chu Mu's mind. Even the electric arcs jumping crazily on the sword were clearly perceived by Chu Mu. Die! The sword slashed down, accompanied by Fang Hao's roar. You're the one who's going to die. Chu Mu growled. His right hand grabbed the handle of the demon-slaying sword with lightning speed and attacked. Suddenly, the cold sword light burst out like an aurora. It was so blinding that Fang Hao couldn't help but squint. Chu Mu's sword slashed horizontally. This sword was not fast or slow. It was not as fast as Fang Hao's sword. There was no fluctuation of power on the sword. It was like a simple horizontal slash. A trace of disdain flashed through Fang Hao's heart. A trifling sword like this simply didn't have any power. He had even more confidence that he would be able to hit Chu Mu before Chu Mu's sword could hit him and insta-kill him. The sword suddenly sped up. It was completely out of Fang Hao's expectations. The sword wind brought by the demon-slaying sword was terrifying. It tore through Fang Hao's protective sword chi slightly. Fang Hao's expression changed. This ordinary sword strike suddenly made him feel great danger. It was as if he was a rabbit a second ago and a lion a second later. At this time, it was too late to dodge. Fang Hao gritted his teeth and turned the sword slashing towards Chu Mu to the demon-slaying sword. He had a feeling that if he continued to slash at Chu Mu, he would be killed by Chu Mu's sword first. No matter what, he had to block Chu Mu's sword. The electric arcs on the sword became denser. Fang Hao's hair stood on end. Thunder burst out from his body like a thunder god. Slash iron. The demon-slaying sword collided with Fang Hao's electric sword. In an instant, Fang Hao's face turned pale. The demon-slaying sword cut through Fang Hao's top-grade sword like tofu. Its power was reduced, but its speed was still the same. Chu Mu's figure passed by Fang Hao. The dozen or so black-robed swordsmen only heard a cryptic breaking sound. Fang Hao seemed to have become a statue that didn't move. In the next breath, Fang Hao's upper body fell forward, but his lower body was still standing. Fresh blood spurted out from his broken waist. One sword kill. Senior brother Fang. The black-robed swordsmen were shocked. They roared in grief and anger. They immediately pulled out their swords and rushed towards Chu Mu. Avenge senior brother Fang. Every black-robed swordsman used their sword skills to attack Chu Mu. Under their swords, Chu Mu's body disappeared and reappeared on the other side. He counterattacked with the demon-slaying sword. In terms of numbers, the black-robed swordsmen were not a small number. In terms of cultivation, they were all at the Qi High Realm. 2 of them were at the peak of the Qi High Realm. The rest were all at the Qi High Realm. But in terms of strength, they were not as good as Fang Hao and Chu Mu. Using the flying swan illusory steps, he seemed to be motionless, but in reality, he was swift and light. He shuttled through the dozen or so black-robed swordsmen. His monster-slaying sword slashed through the air with a cold sword light, and a slight slashing sound could be heard. In the blink of an eye, Chu Mu shuttled between the black-robed swordsmen. With his back facing them, he lightly swung the demon-slaying sword. Blood spilled out from the tip of the sword as he put the sword back into its scabbard. The black-robed swordsmen with different postures fell to the ground one by one. There was a dot or a horizontal line on their throat. The grudge has been settled, Chu Mu said softly. But he also understood that this was only temporary. The Mo Luo sword sect would not give up on their mission to kill him. Next was the time to reap the rewards. Chu Mu obtained a dozen space bracelets. Fang Hao had 2 space bracelets. One was his, an upper-rank one. The other was his reward from the demon slaughter leaderboard. The other 14 black-robed swordsmen all had mid-rank space bracelet. Not to mention the other rewards, just these space bracelets were already a great reward. Plus, the demon slaughter leaderboard that Feng Hao had obtained was not bad. Let's postpone our battle. When I break through to the origin realm, I will come find you. A voice came from afar. Anytime. Chu Mu smiled without turning his head. He was not surprised at all. He already knew that Void Butcher was nearby. Now that he saw Yi Chen kill Feng Hao with one sword attack, Void Butcher knew that he did not have the ability to kill Yi Chen. Since that was the case, why should he torture himself? Right now, Void Butcher was feeling very depressed. Originally, in his eyes, Chu Mu was just a talented young swordsman who could pique his interest. That was why he agreed to meet him in the next half of the year. He did not expect that in less than half a year, Chu Mu would grow so fast. He had broken through to the Low Qi High Realm, and his strength was even more horrifying than before. Especially the sword attack that killed Feng Hao. Even Void Butcher felt a chill run down his spine. That sword attack seemed normal, but it was actually extremely dangerous. If he was Feng Hao, he would not be able to handle it either. After collecting the rewards, Chu Mu did not care about the corpses. Someone would take care of them. After returning to the demon shaking city, Chu Mu went straight to the inn to rest and organize the rewards. Feng Hao did not get the mind-raising pellet. Only the top 3 of the demon slaughtering leaderboard would get it. However, he did get a mind-training pellet. The rest of the demon cores and soul stones were not as many as Chu Mu's. Only the primary extreme experience and the 3 gourds of pellets were the same. After resting for a day, Chu Mu said goodbye to Han Yi and left the inn with O Chengluo. They walked out of the demon shaking city. Then, Chu Mu took out the beast seal pearl and released the wind-winged dragon. It had reached the high mid-rank, and its body had grown by 1/3. Let's go. We will come back when you are strong enough, Chu Mu said as he grabbed O Chengluo's shoulder and jumped onto the back of the wind-winged dragon. The wind-winged dragon flapped its wings and shot into the sky. O Chengluo turned around and looked at the demon-shaking city, as if he wanted to imprint the city in his mind. Soon, the wind-winged dragon turned into a small black dot and left the demon-shaking city. Here, only the legend of the sky sword remained. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 441. I wonder when I can see you again? The Iron Sword gang members, led by Han Yi, stood outside Demon Shaking City. They all looked up at the sky. After a long time, Han Yi retracted his gaze and muttered to himself. Not long after, a figure soared into the sky from Demon Shaking City. After a slight pause, it turned into a stream of light and flew out of the city like lightning, chasing after the wind-winged devil dragon. The wind-winged devil dragon's flying speed was 50% faster than ordinary flying demonic beasts of the same level. It was extremely fast. Of course, it was much slower than the Thunderwing Golden Rock. Even so, the mid-tier wind-winged devil dragon was still extremely fast. It had already broken through the speed of sound. Chu Mu expanded the range of his protective sword aura, enveloping O Chengluo. Otherwise, at such a supersonic speed, O Chengluo would definitely be killed by the countless streams of air. Demon Shaking City, I will definitely return. O Chengluo clenched his fists tightly as he muttered to himself. Don't think too much. You are currently very weak. It is far from enough to deal with the Redcoats Association. Chu Mu said, so, suppress your hatred for now and work hard to improve your strength. At the very least, you need to have the strength of a sword Grand Master before you can take revenge on the Redcoats Association. Sword Grand Master. O Chengluo clenched his teeth and clenched his fists even tighter. I will definitely have the strength of a sword Grand Master or even stronger. The conviction that O Chengluo had in that instant shocked Chu Mu. It was very strong. With the support of such conviction, O Cheng-luo should be able to reach the Sword Grand Master level. Of course, reaching the Sword Grand Master level did not mean that one could become a Sword Grand Master. This was because there was a limit to obtaining the title of Sword Grand Master. Currently, there were only 81 Sword Grand Masters in the entire Great Kuan dynasty. However, there were far more swordsmen with the strength of a Sword Grand Master. There might be hundreds or even thousands of swordsmen. However, when they obtained the strength of a Sword Grand Master, they were already past the age limit. Therefore, they did not have the chance to obtain the title of Sword Grand Master. I will give you two choices, Chu-mu said. O Cheng-luo listened quietly. First, I will bring you back to your clan. However, my clan is only a small clan. It is not strong and has no experts. However, it is suitable for you to live in peace. Second, I'll bring you back to the Sword Sect and let you cultivate there. That will be the starting point for you to enter the Sword Academy and then the Sword Mansion. Brother Chu, did you enter the Sword Academy from the Sword Faction before entering the Sword Mansion? O Cheng-luo asked. Yes, Chu-mu replied. All right, I choose the second option. O Cheng-luo's tone was firm. Okay. Chu-mu nodded. His original plan was to bring O Cheng-luo back to the Chu clan and let him stay in the Chu clan for the rest of his life. This was also Old Master O's wish. However, O Cheng-luo had his own thoughts and was very stubborn. Chu-mu was unable to forcefully change his mind. Since that was the case, he had to provide him with a relatively good environment. Use this time to comprehend your swordsmanship, Chu-mu said. All right. O Cheng-luo nodded. The two of them didn't speak again. Chu-mu entered a state of deep thought. He pondered over the experience of this trial, slowly pondering, slowly chewing, and slowly settling down. Leaving the Great Kuan Sword Manor, watching the battle between the gold-shattering Sword Hero and the Wild Dragon Sword Hero, comprehending 1% of the swordsmanship. Arriving at the Demon Shaker City, entering the cavern of Demon Shaker Mountain, obtaining treasures, breaking through to the Qi High Realm, suppressing the Wild Lion Gang, forcing the Red Shirt Association to retreat, the Monster Army rioting, the life and death battle, comprehending the claw of the thunder-winged Golden Rock and now, riding the wind-winged Demon Dragon and leaving the Demon Shaker City. Scene after scene was replayed like a movie, clearly visible. Chu-mu felt that he had gained something from it. After recalling everything, Chu-mu felt that his cultivation level had increased. Now, as long as he had enough sword qi, he would be able to reach the peak of the Qi High Realm and quickly break through to the Deshang Realm. However, the limitations of the 9 transformations of Sky Origin had already been revealed. It would not be easy for Chu-mu to break through to the Deshang Realm. This time, Chu-mu left the Demon Shaker City with a very clear itinerary. The first stop was the Desolate City. First, he would go to the Heaven Dan Pavilion to get the Desolate Dan. Then, he would rush back to the Chu family. After that, he would go to the Green Edge Sword Sect and settle the matter with the Green Orchid Sword Sect. After that, he would cultivate in peace for a while. Even though the Wind-Winged Demon Dragon was fast, the Demon Shaker City was very far from the Desolate City. It was basically on the opposite side of the Great Kuan Sword Manor. At this moment, the Wind-Winged Demon Dragon's body trembled as if it had encountered something terrifying. Then, Chu-mu's body trembled as well. He felt a terrifying murderous intent coming towards him. This murderous intent even made his skin feel numb. Chu-mu was shocked. He turned around and saw a small black dot quickly approaching him. Even though they were so far apart, just a strand of murderous intent was able to affect him. It was enough to prove that this small black dot was terrifyingly powerful. Speed up, let's go. Chu-mu patted the Wind-Winged Demon Dragon. The Wind-Winged Demon Dragon also understood that if it did not speed up, it would be very dangerous. Therefore, it flapped its wings with all its might, increasing the frequency and speed by 2 times. With a swoosh, it flew away. However, that strand of murderous intent was still locked onto Chu Mu. Waves of numbness came from his skin, like maggots in his bones. Chu Mu had the desolate sky sword physique. This murderous intent did not affect him much. However, it affected the wind-winged demon dragon greatly. The wind-winged demon dragon's blood almost froze. Flapping its wings with all its might, the wind-winged demon dragon's speed increased bit by bit. This was a desperate speed that consumed a lot of energy. The small black dot gradually grew bigger and closer. Vaguely, they could already see the silhouette of a person. A small whirlwind blew on the wind-winged demon dragon's wings, making a whooshing sound. Traces of green light spread across the wings. The wings flapping at high speed seemed to create illusions. Its speed doubled again. The wind-winged demon dragon had already used its secret technique. Even so, the silhouette of the person chasing behind them became clearer bit by bit. It was getting closer and closer. Chu Mu could feel that the person was coming for him. A strand of murderous intent had locked onto him. However, Chu Mu was very confused. He did not know why such a powerful swordsman would want to kill him. This person's strength was definitely beyond the Qi High realm. After analyzing, Chu Mu came to the conclusion that the person was an Origin Realm swordsman. This conclusion shocked Chu Mu. Right now, he was definitely not a match for an Origin Realm swordsman. A single sword Qi would be enough to kill him. This Origin Realm swordsman is too fast. The wind-winged demon dragon could not get rid of him even after using its secret technique. If this continues, only death awaits. Even Luo and the wind-winged demon dragon would not be able to escape. Chu Mu thought to himself. He was extremely anxious. Luo, there is someone chasing after us. Just stay on the back of the wind-winged demon dragon. Whether you can survive or not will depend on your luck. Chu Mu said in a low voice. Without waiting for Luo's reply, he suddenly jumped up and performed the sky-traversing secret technique. The sword Qi wings condensed on his back and flapped fiercely. Chu Mu immediately flew in a different direction from the wind-winged demon dragon. With all his might, his speed was extremely fast. With a swoosh, he was already 200 meters away. With another flap of his wings, he flew another 200 meters away, quickly increasing the distance between him and the wind-winged demon dragon. Chu Mu could feel that the strand of murderous intent was still locked onto him, and it was getting stronger by the second. Indeed, this Origin Realm swordsman's target was him. After confirming this, Chu Mu immediately performed the second level of the sky-traversing secret technique. Sky traversing. The sword Qi wings became even longer and thinner. With a flap, the speed increased by a few times, surpassing the speed of sound by 1,000 meters per breath. After 3 breaths, Chu Mu had rushed out 3,000 meters. However, the Origin Realm swordsman was not left behind. He quickly caught up and a strand of murderous intent was still locked onto Chu Mu. Sky traversing. Sky traversing. Sky traversing. After performing the sky traversing secret technique, Chu Mu was as fast as lightning. However, he was still unable to shake off the figure chasing after him. Instead, as his speed increased, the figure's speed increased as well. It felt like a cat playing with a mouse. Anger surged out from his heart and filled his chest. Like a volcano erupting, Chu Mu dove down. Since I can't shake him off, then let's fight. Chu Mu was roaring in his heart. Even though he knew that he was no match for this Origin Realm swordsman, even if the opponent only needed one strand of sword Qi to hit him, he still wanted to fight. The spirit of a swordsman was to cut through all obstacles and go against the current. He would rather break than surrender. Even if he were to die, he would fight back and injure the opponent. As for killing the opponent, that was an extravagant hope. As if sensing Chu Mu's determination, the Origin Realm swordsman also dove down and chased after him. After landing, Chu Mu pulled out the monster-slaying sword and looked up. After a few breaths, the figure also landed and stopped about 10 meters above the ground. It was 100 meters away from Chu Mu, staring down at Chu Mu from above. It was a skinny and short old man who looked to be in his 70s or 80s. His skin was dark and his face was full of wrinkles. His hair was gray and messy, and his nose was like an eagle's beak. His eyes were sunken and gloomy, like a poisonous snake waiting for an opportunity to strike. His gaze landed on Chu Mu, which immediately made Chu Mu's muscles tense up. A very bad feeling spread throughout his body. From the opponent's aura, Chu Mu was finally able to confirm that he was an Origin Realm swordsman. May I ask what kind of advice the Supreme has for me? Chu Mu focused his mind and was extremely alert. He increased the speed of the Heavenly Yuan sword chi, and his sword force was ready to erupt like a volcano. He made all kinds of preparations as he asked. At such a young age, you are already at the small success of the Chi High Realm. Your sword force has also reached the completion stage. Your strength is even above most of the swordsmen at the completion stage of the Chi High Realm. You already have the qualifications to challenge for the title of Sword Hero. The gloomy, skinny old man didn't reply. His eyes flickered as if he was examining his prey. His voice was sharp like fingernails scratching glass, causing goosebumps to rise all over Chu Mu's body. Originally, you should have had a boundless future. Of all the things you shouldn't have done, you shouldn't have killed my disciple. Who is the Supreme's beloved disciple? Chu Mu resisted the goosebumps all over his body and asked again. Xieyang. The skinny old man's voice was still as terrifying as before. His eyes turned violent. Since you killed my disciple, I will avenge him. But don't worry, I won't kill you that easily. I will let you have a taste of the venerable Een Snake's methods and let you die in endless pain. In his eyes, Chu Mu was only a genius that he could crush with one hand. There was no need to treat him with caution. It was like a normal person facing an ant. Chu Mu took a deep breath and felt suffocated. His left hand gripped the dark red dagger tightly. This was his only chance to fight back. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 442. Venerable Een Snake's eyes turned dark green, and the cold aura around him became even more intense. It was like a storm was blowing in all directions, controlling everything within a radius of a few thousand meters. Chu Mu only felt waves of chilly wind blow towards him. Every gust of chilly wind seemed to weigh over 10,000 kilograms, causing Chu Mu to feel even more pressure. His entire body was constantly being crushed. If he had almost completed the heavenly desolate sword body, a normal body would have had its bones broken and its muscles crushed by this chilly wind. Venerable Een Snake's dark green eyes flashed with curiosity. To be able to withstand the pressure of my aura, your body is extraordinary. Good. The stronger your body is, the more fun it will be for me to torture you. As soon as he finished speaking, the waves of cold wind became even more intense. It let out a roar like an angry dragon, and the sound waves surged. Chu Mu only felt that his bones could not withstand the pressure and groaned. It was as if they were about to break. The muscles all over his body were in extreme pain. When the cold wind blew past, they felt like they were being torn apart. The moon-white robe on his body was torn apart and turned into powder by the cold wind. His skin emitted a yellowish-brown luster. Black cracks appeared on his skin. The power of the sky desolate sword body was truly displayed, and it resisted the strong cold wind. If it were other strong Chi High warriors like Sky Slaughterer, they would not be able to withstand this cold wind for more than a few seconds. Under the attack of the cold wind, their flesh and blood would be crushed and they would die. Venerable Een Snake's dark green eyes were filled with surprise, and also a trace of joy. Good. Looks like you have trained in a secret body refining technique. This technique allows you to withstand my aura. Obediently hand over the secret body refining technique, and I will give you a quick death. Venerable Een Snake's voice pierced through the eardrums, making Chu Mu uncomfortable. Chu Mu did not answer. Under the attack of the cold wind, he had no choice but to use all of his sword energy to resist. The hidden power of the sky desolate sword body was also forced out, continuously resisting the cold wind. His right hand gripped the demon-slaying sword tightly while his left hand gripped the dark red dagger tightly. Without realizing it, he was cut by the dagger, and a sliver of blood flowed into the dagger. The dagger began to shimmer with a faint light. The dagger's sharpness was still above the demon-slaying sword, so it was Chu Mu's only chance to counterattack. At the moment when Venerable Een Snake was least paying attention, he shot out the dagger with all his strength, hoping to injure Venerable Een Snake. The chilly wind grew stronger and stronger, vaguely looking like dancing poisonous snakes. Chu Mu's sword moves were shattered time and time again, but they were reformed under his strong willpower and powerful spirit. Defeat, regroup, defeat again, regroup again and again, it was defeated and reassembled. The momentum of the sword was like a sword embryo that was being hammered continuously. It was gradually transforming into a sharp sword. After a while, Venerable Een Snake also discovered this point and was immediately enraged. "You're actually using my aura to temper your sword. Junior, you really deserve to die." In his anger, Venerable Een Snake withdrew his aura. Chu Mu only felt that the pressure that was about to crush him instantly disappeared. Before he could react, Venerable Een Snake's body shook, and rays of dark green sword light burst out. In an instant, thousands of finger-thick dark green sword light turned into Een Snakes and rushed towards Chu Mu from all directions, as if they wanted to devour Chu Mu. "Junior, have a good taste of my thousand snakes devouring body move. I will let you die in endless pain." Venerable Een Snake's terrifying laughter resounded through the heavens and earth. Chu Mu's expression changed greatly. He only felt that thousands of Een Snakes were rushing towards him, and there was nowhere for him to dodge. Even if he had reached the third level of the Flying Swan illusory steps, he still could not dodge. This was no longer something that could be solved by lawlessness, but by the huge gap between the realms. Between the Chi-Hai realm and the Astral realm, there was still the ninth transformation realm. With such a huge gap, Chu Mu could not dodge at all. He was trapped in all directions, as if he was trapped in an air cage with nowhere to run. The Heaven Yuan sword chi poured into the monster-slaying sword. With the support of the ripping mentality, the monster-slaying sword let out a buzzing sound. The sword slashed out, as if it could cut through the heavens and earth. The stone-shaking energy was activated. Stone-shaking wave sword. With a twist of his wrist, the monster-slaying sword stabbed out. The dark golden sword light became extremely dense and bright, but it quickly shrunk. Following Chu Mu's stab, it turned into a finger-thick dark golden sword light that broke through the sky. Space-splitting sword strike. No matter if it was the stone-shaking wave sword or the space-splitting sword strike, Chu Mu had used all of his strength. He had even exceeded his limit and reached 120% of his power. The Heaven Yuan sword chi was like a raging river as it poured into the monster-slaying sword. With each and every powerful sword skill being used, Chu Mu could no longer care about anything else. No matter what, even if he knew that the result would be death, he would still fight back. His left hand gripped the small dark red sword tightly. Part of the Heaven Yuan sword chi was poured into it and compressed. The ripping mentality was also poured into it, and so was the sword aura. Chu Mu had used up all of his strength and left it for this one attack. 3 stone-shaking wave swords and 1 space-splitting sword strike collided with the thousands of Een Snake sword light. In that instant, the stone-shaking wave swords and the space-splitting sword strike were all shattered, unable to cause any damage to the Een Snake sword light. Chu Mu could clearly feel that the Een Snake sword lights contained a vibration that made his heart palpitate. It was an existence that was even more terrifying than the sword aura. Success or failure depends on this. With a deep roar, Chu Mu's pupils emitted an aurora-like sword light. The dark gold light pierced through the void. His left arm suddenly swung out as if his entire arm was about to be flung out. The small dark red sword shot out with lightning speed, piercing through the sky. The sharp sound made Venerable Yin Shi's expression change. His pupils narrowed as he stared at the small dark red sword. In his eyes, although the small sword was very fast, it was not to the point where he could not see it clearly. The small dark red sword did not seem to have any strong point. It could not hurt him at all. However, for some reason, Venerable Yin Shi had a feeling that the small dark red sword was very dangerous. This feeling of danger was indescribable. He flicked his finger and a Yin snake sword light immediately changed direction and shot towards the small dark red sword. The small sword was immediately hit. The Yin snake sword light was shattered, and all of the additional power on the small sword was also shattered. However, the small sword suddenly stopped in midair and trembled violently, making a sound like a swarm of bees. Waves of dark red light spread out from the small sword, forming ripples. The dark red ripples spread out very quickly. Wherever they passed, the space seemed to solidify. The Yin snake sword lights that were spread out by the ripples were shattered like smoke being blown by the wind. Several hundred Yin snake sword auras had already shot towards Chu Mu. They were only an inch away from Chu Mu's body. A dark red ripple swept past, and the Yin snake sword auras were like smoke blown by a strong wind, shattering and dissipating. This. Venerable Yin Shi's pupils suddenly enlarged. A trace of danger emerged from the bottom of his heart. He quickly retreated, not letting the dark red ripples touch him. A dark green snake-shaped short sword appeared in his hand, and he swung it out. The huge dark green snake-shaped sword light pierced through the air and shot towards the small dark red sword. It collided with the dark red ripples. The dark red ripples were slightly obstructed, but they continued to spread out as usual. The huge dark green snake-shaped sword light trembled violently, as if it was being skinned layer by layer. Not good. Venerable Yin Snake's expression changed greatly. At his level of cultivation, he had a sharp sense of danger. He once again waved his short sword and slashed out streaks of dark green snake-shaped sword light. He quickly retreated and soared into the sky. Too late. A voice suddenly sounded. It was a faint sigh. It was like the ravings of a ghost, like a sigh from the ancient void. Venerable Yin Shi's hair stood up, like little snakes soaring into the sky. His face was pale, and his vertical pupils contracted. His heart felt like it was being grabbed by an invisible hand. It was incomparably uncomfortable and suffocating. It had been a long time since he had experienced such a feeling. Go. Venerable Yin Shi only had one thought, and that was to quickly leave this place. As for revenge for his disciple, he would think about it later. At the same time, a shadow appeared from the small dark red sword. It became clear in the blink of an eye. It was a swordsman wearing a dark red robe. He looked to be in his 30s, and his eyes were tightly closed. This swordsman in a dark red robe suddenly opened his eyes. Circles of dark red ripples appeared in his pupils, like the eyes of a devil. Venerable Yin Shi, who was being stared at, trembled. His body that was about to soar into the sky seemed to be imprisoned in the air, unable to move. Venerable Yin Shi was extremely shocked. His eyes were wide open and his face was pale. He stared at the swordsman in a dark red robe that appeared from the small dark red sword. This swordsman was not only wearing a dark red robe, but his long hair was also dark red. When he opened his eyes and stared at Venerable Yin Shi, Venerable Yin Shi felt as if there was an endless amount of blood chi in front of him. It was as if he had been pulled into an Azura killing field. His will was greatly impacted. It was hard to imagine what kind of existence this was. Just a glance was enough to make Venerable Yin Shi feel as if his soul was being torn apart by countless killing auras. It was so painful that he almost fainted. Resisting with all his might, Venerable she did not care about the burden on his body. Finally, he broke free from this imprisonment and soared into the sky. He was already scared out of his wit. He wanted to leave this place immediately. As for the matter of revenge, it could go to hell. In the blink of an eye, Venerable she had reached several hundred meters in the air. He turned around and quickly flew into the distance. In just a breath of time, he had flown over 1,000 meters. It was comparable to Chu Mu using soaring into the sky. Die! A low groan came from the mouth of the swordsman in the dark red robe. It was like a faint sigh. The small dark red sword danced and grew in size, becoming a long sword in the swordsman's hand. The sword gently slashed in the direction of Venerable snake. In an instant, the dark red sword light tore through the air and shot out at lightning speed. Its speed was dozens of times faster than Venerable Shi's escaping speed. In the blink of an eye, it had caught up. Venerable Shi subconsciously turned around to look. He was scared out of his wits. The dark red sword light had sliced through his body without any resistance. His protective sword aura and supreme grade armor could not block it at all. They were as weak as tofu. One sword, instakill. A venerable had died. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 443. The two halves of the corpse fell from the sky, blood raining down like rain. A venerable, a powerful Origin Realm swordsman, was killed in one strike. Just one strike. This scene fell into Chu Mu's eyes, making him feel as if he was struck by lightning. That kind of shock could not be described with words. He became absent-minded and stood there with his eyes wide open, as if he had turned into a statue. His heart was in a perilous situation, almost extinguishing his consciousness. He was extremely shocked. The figure of the dark red-robed swordsman, holding a dark red longsword, was like an ancient demon imprinted in Chu Mu's heart and soul. The dark red figure turned around. Chu Mu only felt a moment of absent-mindedness, as if the dark red-robed swordsman was facing him before. Layers of ripples spread out from the dark red pupils. Chu Mu's body trembled and his face turned pale. He felt as if his soul had been sucked into an Azura's slaughter field. Everywhere was dark red, broken limbs, and a murderous aura filled the sky. A few days ago, the millions of demonic beasts and hundreds of thousands of swordsmen fought fiercely. Compared to what Chu Mu saw, that kind of slaughter field paled in comparison. It was like a firefly compared to the bright moon. Chu Mu was almost lost in this Azura's slaughter field. Just as he was about to become a wandering soul, he suddenly felt a moment of absent-mindedness. He left the Azura's slaughter field and returned to his body. The scene just now was like an illusion. The dark red swordsman's figure was still floating in the air, looking down at Chu Mu. His pupils had turned black, and the dark red ripples had disappeared. His expression was calm and indifferent. Facing this person, Chu Mu felt an indescribable pressure, a pressure that came from the depths of his soul. He could not feel the slightest bit of aura from the person in front of him, as if he did not exist. It also felt as if he was as deep as the sea and as dark as the abyss. "Thank you, Senior, for saving me." Chu Mu reacted and immediately bowed with his sword. "You woke me up, but I still need you to send the Shura sword back to the Shura sword sect. I will naturally protect you." After a while, the swordsman opened his mouth and spoke. His voice was like a sweet spring, causing the pressure in Chu Mu's heart to lessen, making him feel much better. Only then did he realize that the dark red-robed swordsman seemed to be fainter than before. "If you have any questions, we can talk about them later. Go and collect the treasures of that primary realm swordsman," the swordsman in the dark red robe continued. "Yes," Chu Mu hurriedly replied, using the flying swan illusory steps to quickly rush to the place where Venerable Snake's corpse had fallen. As soon as he moved, he felt waves of weakness coming from his body. It was as if his body had used up a lot of energy. There was also a feeling of soreness and swelling. This feeling was like the overload caused by an ordinary person who had exercised too much. There was not much heavenly essence, sword chi left in his dantian. Only then did Chu Mu come to his senses. He quickly took out a chi linking pill and swallowed it. The heavenly essence, sword chi, quickly recovered. The fatigue and powerlessness in his body did not affect Chu Mu much. His willpower was incomparably strong. The place where Venerable Een Snake's corpse had fallen was not far away. In just a few dozen breaths, Chu Mu appeared between the two halves of Venerable Een Snake's corpse. He picked up Venerable Een Snake's short sword. The short sword emitted a shocking wave of energy. It was entirely dark green and had a snake pattern on it. This was a powerful sword that surpassed supreme-grade swords. It was a royal-grade sword. Next, Chu Mu found a space bracelet on Venerable Een Snake's left wrist. It was a dark gold space bracelet. A supreme-grade space bracelet. This was the first time Chu Mu had seen a supreme-grade space bracelet. He was both curious and pleasantly surprised. However, he did not recognize it as his master. Instead, he checked it again. After confirming that there was nothing else, he took the space bracelet and the short sword and used the flying swan illusory steps to return to his original spot. Senior, these belong to Venerable Een Snake. Chu Mu handed the short sword and the supreme-grade space bracelet to the swordsman in dark red robes. He had killed Venerable Een Snake and saved Chu Mu's life. Naturally, the short sword and the supreme-grade space bracelet were his spoils of war. An ordinary royal-grade sword and a supreme-grade space bracelet. These are useless to me. You can keep them. The swordsman in dark red robes glanced at them and said indifferently. Chu Mu noticed a trace of disdain in the swordsman's eyes. Clearly, the swordsman did not care for these two items. Chu Mu did not hesitate. Since the swordsman did not care for them, he would accept them. After all, these items were very valuable to him. A drop of blood fell on the supreme-grade space bracelet and it easily recognized him as its master. The short sword was also stored in the space bracelet. Because the senior was here, Chu Mu was not in a hurry to check what was inside the space bracelet. How should I address you, senior? Chu Mu saluted with his sword again. I am the Azura Sword of Gojoseon. You can call me senior, the swordsman in dark red robes said indifferently. Chu Mu's heart trembled. The Azura Sword of Gojoseon. Since ancient times, to be crowned with the title of Sword of Gojoseon, which one of them was not peerless in their generation? Which one of them was not famous throughout the world? It had been a few years since Chu Mu came to the ancient sword continent. He was no longer the ignorant person he used to be. He knew that the Sword of Gojoseon was an honorific title and a symbol of strength. It was the recognition of the Sword Tao. When a swordsman stepped on the path of the Sword Tao, they started off as a sword hero, then a sword venerable, and then a Sword of Gojoseon. The gap between each level was huge, and the difference in strength was at least 10 times or even 100 times. Think about it, the Sword of Gojoseon had appeared in desolate border city, allowing it to be autonomous. This was a glory that other cities in the dynasty did not have except Demon Shaking City. Demon Shaking City was created because of its special geographical location, while Desolate Border City was created because of its strength. From this, one could see how powerful the Sword of Gojoseon was. Now, there was a Sword of Gojoseon in front of Chu Mu, the Azura Sword of Gojoseon. From this title, one could tell that this was a Sword of Gojoseon from the Azura Sword Sect. The Azura Sword Sect was a sword sect of the Central Sword Domain, so one could only imagine how powerful this Azura Sword of Gojoseon was. The Azura Sword of Gojoseon could see through Chu Mu's current situation and indifferently said, "You should be cultivating some sort of body-tempering secret art. It's just that fighting against the Origin Extreme Swordsman's aura has consumed a lot of the energy of this body-tempering secret art. As long as you replenish it, you'll be able to recover." Chu Mu was just worrying about how to recover his exhausted and weak body, but after hearing the Azura sword of Gojoseon's words, he immediately understood. He was wrong about one thing. The Sky Desolate sword physique was not a body-tempering secret art, but because it had the function of a body-tempering secret art, it was mistaken for a body-tempering secret art. However, the body-tempering secret art you're cultivating is not perfect yet. Its level is also low, but its potential is not bad. The Azura sword of Gojoseon added. Chu Mu could not help but be startled. He felt that the Sky Desolate sword physique was only missing the hair chapter before he could master it. From the Azura sword of Gojoseon's words, it seemed that after mastering it, it would only be a low level. Was there an even higher level? However, the Azura sword of Gojoseon did not know the details. As for what it was like, he would only know after mastering the hair chapter. The Sky Origin sword chi had recovered to its peak because of the energy linking pill, but his body still felt weak from time to time. Now that he no longer had the ancient Sky Desolate pill, he did not even have a low-grade Sky Desolate pill. Chu Mu thought for a moment and remembered that he still had the Sky Desolate stone. I wonder if it's possible? Thinking of this, Chu Mu took out a Sky Desolate stone in his left hand. He divided his mind into two parts. One part was concentrated on the Sky Desolate stone, trying to see if he could absorb the Sky Desolate chi within. The Azura sword of Gojoseon also noticed Chu Mu's actions, but did not say anything. After a full 10 breaths, Chu Mu succeeded in drawing a trace of Sky Desolate chi into his palm. Suddenly, it was quickly absorbed like water into a sponge. I'm only left with a soul body, so I can't stay outside for too long. First, return to the Azura sword. In the future, carry it with you. Don't put the Azura sword in the spatial bracelet. The Azura sword of Gojoseon instructed, if there's nothing important, don't look for me. Also, when you're strong enough to go to the central sword domain, I hope you can bring me to the Azura sword sect. At that time, if you're willing, you can also enter the Azura sword sect. With my recommendation, you have a great chance of inheriting the Azura sword Dao. After saying this, the Azura sword of Gojoseon's body became distorted. Like smoke, it retreated into the Azura sword. The Azura sword also quickly shrank, returning to its original small sword form and flying towards Chu Mu. Chu Mu put the small dark red sword into his sleeve. He planned to find a strong enough silk thread to tie the small dark red sword and make it into a necklace to wear around his neck. Traces of Sky Desolate chi continuously flowed from the low-grade Sky Desolate stone into Chu Mu's palm and were quickly absorbed by his body. Gradually, Chu Mu felt that his body was not as tired as before. Right, I still have to find a Luo and the Wind-Winged Dragon. Muttering to himself, Chu Mu once again used the sky-traversing secret technique. Sword chi wings condensed behind his back. With a so sound, he shot into the sky. Relying on his weak sense of the Wind-Winged Dragon, he quickly chased after the Wind-Winged Dragon. This time, being chased by Venerable Een Snake could be said to be a close shave with death. Facing Venerable Een Snake, who was at the Origin Realm, even if Chu Mu's strength was 10 times stronger, he still wouldn't be a match for him. All he could do was struggle against Venerable Een Snake's counterattack. In the end, he couldn't avoid death. If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted to injure Venerable Een Snake even if he had to die, he would have taken out the small dark red sword from the spatial bracelet. If it wasn't for the Azura sword of Gojoseon, Venerable Een Snake would have been tortured to death. Thinking of this, Chu Mu couldn't help but sigh. As it turned out, the true secret of the small dark red sword was that it contained the soul of the sword of Gojoseon. The sword of Gojoseon. While flying at high speed, Chu Mu's expression froze. His face was filled with shock as he sucked in a breath of cold air, the sword of Gojoseon. So, one sword to kill the Origin Realm. Chu Mu had a rough idea of how strong a sword hero was. He was confident that with his current strength, Even if he couldn't reach the sword hero level, he wouldn't be too far off. How strong was the sword venerable above the sword hero level? Chumu didn't know. As for the sword of Gojosian above the sword venerable level, Chumu didn't know either. Just the sword venerable alone was very far away from Chumu, and the sword of Gojosian was an even more unreachable goal. Chumu had been so shocked that he had neglected other factors. Only now that he was fully awake and thinking about it, did he remember that the Azura sword of Gojosian was only in the form of a soul. Just how strong was the Azura sword of Gojosian when he was in the form of a soul? If the Azura sword of Gojosian was beaten to such a state, then how strong was his enemy? It was unimaginable. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidien.com to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 444. Chumu used more than 2 hours to catch up to the Wind-Winged Dragon. Because the Wind-Winged Dragon had used its innate demonic skill to accelerate its flight, its vitality was greatly damaged. Therefore, its flying speed had decreased by several times. Moreover, it was flying in a crooked manner, like a bird that had been shot and could fall at any time. Fortunately, the Wind-Winged Dragon was a demonic beast. Its body was strong, and its recovery ability was also strong. It was recovering bit by bit. However, Ochringluo had a hard time. His hands were tightly gripping the scales on the Wind-Winged Dragon's back, and he was extremely shocked. With his strength, once he fell, he would be smashed into a meat patty. After Chumu caught up, he quickly took out mid-tier high-tier demonic cores and had the Wind-Winged Dragon eat them. A mid-tier high-tier demonic core could be quickly converted into demonic energy. With sufficient demonic energy, the Wind-Winged Dragon could recover even faster. After swallowing 10 mid-tier high-tier demonic cores, the Wind-Winged Dragon's flight became stable again. Its speed also increased by a lot, nearing its normal speed. Chumu landed on the Wind-Winged Dragon's back. Ochenglua's pale face returned to normal. Seeing Chumu return, he seemed to have found his backbone. Under Chumu's command, the Wind-Winged Dragon adjusted its direction. Its goal was to return to the Chu clan first. The original plan was to go to the desolate city first, then return to the Chu clan. After the incident with the Azura sword of Gojosian, Chumu suddenly remembered that the desolate building in the desolate city had a place where the sword of Gojosian once cultivated. Once he met the requirements, he could enter and visit it. Therefore, he also planned to find an opportunity to visit the sword of Gojosian's cultivation place and see if he could comprehend anything. Chumu had no idea how long that would take. It could be very short or very long. Therefore, he planned to return to the Chu clan first, then go to the Green Edge Sword sect to deal with some matters that needed to be resolved. One day later, the Wind-Winged Dragon had completely recovered, and its speed had increased. Every day, apart from resting, Chumu was comprehending the sword force. When facing Venerable Een Snake, his sword aura had been shattered time and time again, but it had been reformed time and time again under Chumu's powerful will, belief, and spirit. Every time it was shattered and reformed, it would become purer and more powerful. The sword force had been tempered thousands of times, and it was no longer at the initial stage of perfection. Instead, it had taken a huge step forward, and it was not far from the peak. More importantly, Chumu was now reflecting on it every day, and he always gained something. As the days passed, the improvement of his sword force was obvious, and he was getting closer and closer to the peak. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Chumu temporarily gave up on comprehending the concept. Finally, after 10 days, the Wind-Winged Dragon approached Mizar City. It flew directly into the city, and appeared in the air above the Chu residence. The Chu clan was shocked at first, but when they found out that Chumu had returned, they were overjoyed. His parents were so happy that they cried tears of joy. That night, there was a family banquet, during which Chumu learned about the current development of the Chu clan. Right now, the entire Mizar city belonged to the Chu clan. The Wang clan had already become history, and the Lin clan had become a vassal clan. The Chu clan was several times stronger than before. In terms of Qi transformation realm swordsmen, there were already more than 10. Although most of them were at the initial stage of Qi transformation realm, there were still more than 20 half-step Qi transformation realm swordsmen. The number of swordsmen at the advanced stage of Sword Qi transformation realm had also increased greatly. Every member of the Chu clan was very clear that the reason the Chu clan could be where it was today was because of Chu Mu. Without Chu Mu, there would be no Chu clan now. Therefore, every member of the Chu clan was very respectful to Chu Mu. It was a respect that came from the bottom of their hearts. The younger generation even worshipped him from the bottom of their hearts. They all imitated Chu Mu and used him as a role model to cultivate diligently. The Chu clan also abided by Chu Mu's principle of attaching importance to basic sword technique. This was one of the family teachings of the Chu clan. Apart from strength, the Chu clan's business was also growing bigger and bigger, and their wealth was also increasing. They could cultivate even more outstanding disciples. If this cycle continued, the Chu clan might very well become a large clan in another 100 years. Chu Mu was very happy about the Chu clan's development. No matter what, this was his roots. His parents were also here. Naturally, he hoped that the Chu clan would grow stronger. Chu Mu stayed in the Chu clan for 3 days. He secretly handed over some spirit stones, cultivation methods, sword techniques, spatial bracers, and swords to his grandfather, Chu Dongxiong. He had him arrange them so that the Chu clan would grow stronger in secret. When Chu Dongxiong saw the things Chu Mu took out, he was frightened. Then, he became happy and comforted. He repeatedly said that it was his good fortune to have a grandson like Chu Mu. 3 days later, under the reluctant gazes of his parents and the rest of the Chu clan, Chu Mu left the Chu clan with Otring Luo on the wind-winged dragon. They quickly flew towards the Qinglan mountain and soon arrived at the sky above the Qingfeng sword sect. The wind-winged dragon was a mid-level high-level demon beast. It was equivalent to a Qi high swordsman Deshang. To the people of the Qingfeng sword sect, its demon Qi was very strong. Even the previous headmaster was shocked, let alone the others. When they knew that Chu Mu had returned, they were so happy that they didn't know where they were going. Chu Mu's return was a big event. He did not plan to hide his whereabouts. Therefore, all the disciples of the Qingfeng sword sect knew about it. However, the Qingfeng sword sect had a lot of new disciples in the past few years. There were only a few disciples left from the same generation as Chu Mu, such as Luo Yuling and Li Wei. The new disciples were not familiar with Chu Mu. They were just interested in him. As the Sword Pavilion elder who had taught him sword arts, Chu Mu gave him a top mid-level sword, a top-level mystic-level sword art, and a human-level ancient sword technique. He also spent some time to discuss sword arts with the Sword Pavilion elder. In terms of sword arts, the current Chu Mu was far better than the Sword Pavilion elder. It could be said that he was teaching him. Naturally, Chu Mu also took out some things that he did not need. For example, cultivation methods, sword techniques, and mid to upper level sword. He gave them to the Qingfeng sword sect to increase the strength of the Qingfeng sword sect. The Lingfeng sword sect master chatted happily with Chu Mu. He took out a letter and gave it to Chu Mu. It was a letter that Xiao Qianfeng had left behind half a year ago. The content of the letter was very short. There was only one sentence. "I'll wait for you in the central main sword region." Every stroke of the characters contained a restrained sharpness. This sharpness was boundless, indicating that Xiao Qianfeng's current attainments in Sword Dao were extremely high. As for how high it was, Chu Mu couldn't be sure based on the characters alone. Holding the letter and looking at the endless sharpness of the words, Chu Mu felt as if he could see Xiao Qianfeng standing in front of him and personally saying these words to him. For a moment, he felt his blood boil. His sword aura was overflowing. The Lingfeng sword sect master could not stand next to Chu Mu and had to retreat more than 10 meters. His face was full of horror and astonishment. He thought that Chu Mu was now stronger than him, but he did not expect him to be so much stronger. There was no comparison at all. He did not stay in the Qingfeng sword sect for long. Chu Mu left Ochengluo in the Qingfeng sword sect and recommended him to become a disciple of the Qingfeng sword sect. The Qingfeng sword sect master was naturally very happy. "Are you leaving now?" the Lingfeng sword sect master asked. He had always been casual, but at this time, he was a little reluctant. "I'll go to the Qinglan sword sect first." Chu Mu smiled and said, "The Qinglan sword sect." The Lingfeng sword sect master's eyes lit up. He recalled the events of the past and seemed to hear Chu Mu's words. "Within 10 years, I'll challenge the Qinglan sword sect." Now, in less than 5 years, Chu Mu was going to the Qinglan sword sect. "After the matter of the Qinglan sword sect is settled, I'll leave immediately," Chu Mu said. "If I come back in the future, I'll talk to you through the night." Now that Chu Mu's cultivation level was higher, his strength was stronger, and his knowledge was broader. Naturally, he had an extraordinary temperament and would not be the same as before. However, he still had a heartfelt respect for the Lingfeng sword sect. Riding the wind-winged dragon, he flew directly to the Qinglan sword sect. The wind-winged dragon flew directly to the sky of the Qinglan sword sect, and a huge demon chi spread out. It immediately caused a commotion in the Qinglan sword sect. There were all kinds of voices and figures appeared. Even the previous sect master of the Qinglan sword sect was alarmed. "What brings you to the Qinglan sword sect?" The previous sect master of the Qinglan sword sect was a swordsman at the initial level of Qi Hai. When he saw Chu Mu on the back of the wind-winged dragon, he quickly saluted with his sword and said, "Killing people," Chu Mu said lightly. Suddenly, the faces of the people of the Qinglan sword sect changed. "How did the Qinglan sword sect offend you?" the previous sect master of the Qinglan sword sect asked carefully. He was very afraid of Chu Mu and the wind-winged dragon. "My name is Chu Mu. A few years ago, I joined the Qingfeng sword sect. After the trip to the Qinglan Void Realm, I said that I wanted to challenge the Qinglan sword sect in 10 years. Now I'm here," Chu Mu said faintly. His words shocked the people of Qinglan sword sect. Their expressions changed drastically and became extremely ugly. "Don't worry, I only kill people who have a grudge with me," Chu Mu smiled and said. He was not crazy enough to slaughter the entire Qinglan sword sect. Perhaps the Qinglan sword sect was not that great, but that was between him and the Qingfeng sword sect. Moreover, Chu Mu, who had seen more and had a higher cultivation level, was not the same as before. It was like a chicken that had turned into an eagle. The chicken ate the worm while the eagle hunted the snake. The worm and the snake were two different concepts. The chicken and the eagle were also two different concepts. If he did not say that he wanted to challenge the Qinglan sword sect in 10 years, and that Yao Ri was too much, Chu Mu would not have bothered. "I don't know who offended you," the previous sect master said bitterly. The previous headmaster said bitterly. He had been cultivating in seclusion all this time and had no idea what was going on. Elder Yao Ri in the crowd was hiding and wanted to retreat. He was immediately discovered by Chu Mu. "Yao Ri, you tried to kill me many times back then. Why are you hiding now?" Chu Mu found Yao Ri and immediately shouted, "This time, I will only kill Yao Ri. If any one of you wants to come forward, I will show no mercy." As he said that, the demon slayer's sword was unsheathed and the sword pierced through the air. Elder Yao Ri did not even have time to react before the sword pierced through his forehead. Blood flowed down. His eyes were full of confusion and his body slowly leaned back. "You have already killed Yao Ri. If it is not enough, then kill me. But please let the Qinglan sword sect go." The previous sect master of Qinglan smiled bitterly. He did not even see how Chu Mu attacked, let alone the others. Chu Mu just glanced at him and then glanced at the crowd. The sword broke out and one by one they suddenly fell to the ground. Immediately, he jumped on the back of the wind-winged demon dragon, flew into the sky and quickly went away. The matter of the Qinglan sword sect was over. The knot in his heart was gone and his world was broader. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidien.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 445. The matter of Qinglan was settled, and the knot in his heart was resolved. There were no more obstacles. He sat steadily on the back of the wind-winged demon dragon like a mountain. The wind-winged demon dragon flapped its wings and flew across the sky towards the desolate city. When they flew over Kaiyang City, Chu Mu looked down and could vaguely see the Chu clan mansion. He sighed softly. He did not know when he would return to the Chu clan after leaving this time. Perhaps it would be a few years later, or a decade later, or even decades later. Everything was unknown. With a sense of loss in his heart, the wind-winged demon dragon flew over Kaiyang City and gradually disappeared. Chu Xingyun and his wife seemed to have felt something. They rushed out of their rooms and into the courtyard. They looked up at the sky. The sky was clear and cloudless, but they felt a sense of loss for no reason. Flying, resting, flying again, resting again. After repeating this cycle for about half a month, Chu Mu once again entered the desolate border. At first glance, it seemed to be an endless barren land. A desolate aura filled the air, making people feel small and insignificant. Locking onto the direction of the desolate city, the wind-winged demon dragon adjusted its direction under Chu Mu's command and sped away. Not long after, an ancient city appeared in front of him. When he got close to the desolate city, the wind-winged demon dragon landed outside the city. Chu Mu threw a few mid-level super demon nuclei to it and kept them in the beast seal pearl. He turned into a wisp of smoke and appeared at the city gate. Entering the desolate city, as usual, there were no changes. Chu Mu went straight to the Earth Wasteland building. On the 5th floor of the Earth Wasteland building, Chu Mu paid some low-grade spirit stones to buy 300 mid-grade Heaven Wasteland elixirs and 80 upper-grade Heaven Wasteland elixirs. This was enough for him to cultivate the 7th chapter of the Heaven Wasteland Sword Physique, the Hair chapter. When the time came, the Heaven Wasteland Sword Physique would be completed. Chu Mu was not sure if there would be any changes. After chatting with the deacon of the Heavenly Elixir Pavilion for a while, Chu Mu left the Heavenly Elixir Pavilion and went to the staircase. He raised his head and looked at the staircase leading to the 6th floor. He pondered for a while, then quickly walked up. The 6th floor was very empty. There were only 2 old men in their 60s or 70s brewing tea across a table. Chu Mu's arrival attracted the attention of the 2 old men. When their gazes fell on Chu Mu immediately felt a trace of pressure. "Junior, what business do you have here?" the white-robed elder asked in a gentle voice. "I heard that the 8th layer was previously where the sword of Gojoseon cultivated in seclusion in the desolate border." Junior was filled with admiration, so I specially came to pay my respects. Chu Mu saluted with his sword and answered in a neither fast nor slow manner. He could not see through these 2 old men, so he instinctively assumed that they were reverends of the Origin realm. "You're not a disciple of the Jiang clan?" The black-robed old man's expression was cold, and his voice was cold and solemn. "No, I'm not," Chu Mu answered. He actually did not know what conditions he had to meet to enter the 8th floor. The rumors said that he had to satisfy the Jiang clan. Obviously, these 2 old men were from the Jiang clan. How could he satisfy them? The 2 old men did not speak again. Their eyes shined brightly as they scanned Chu Mu's body like laser beams. Chu Mu had a feeling that he was being investigated, as if he was being seen through from the inside out. Bone age of 20, low Qi high realm, and sword Qi is purer than normal low Qi high realm warriors. The white-robed old man nodded with a smile. He looked at the black-robed old man and said, "You are indeed qualified. Leave 10,000 low-rank soul stones and go up from here. The black-robed old man stared at Chu Mu and said with a cold expression. He was not polite at all. Young man, the 7th floor is not easy to pass. If you feel that you can't pass it, then leave immediately. Otherwise, your life will be in danger. The white-robed old man said with a smile. Chu Mu roughly understood. To satisfy the Jiang clan, he had to reach the Qi High realm before the age of 20, and he also had to pay a fee of soul stones. First, it was to ensure that not everyone could enter the 8th floor. Second, it was to increase the Jiang clan's income, although it was not much. The stairs to the 7th floor were blocked by a door. After Chu Mu opened the door, the stairs were dimly lit. Chu Mu took a step forward and arrived at the 7th floor in the blink of an eye. The 7th floor was like an enclosed space. It was dimly lit like dusk. It was about a few hundred square meters in size. There was a staircase on the opposite side that led to the 8th floor. Other than that, there was nothing else. The 6th floor is a recognition, and the 7th floor is a test. Only by passing the test can you enter the 8th floor. Chu Mu squinted his eyes and scanned the 7th floor. He did not find anything special, but his sharp intuition made him feel a sense of danger. Combined with the white-robed old man's words, the 7th floor was very dangerous. He just did not know how to express it, and the unknown made him feel even more pressured. No matter how hard he tried, Chu Mu could not tell what was going on. He felt a sense of danger floating in the air. He raised his guard and performed the flying swan phantom step. With a shoo sound, he turned into a wisp of smoke and quickly flew towards the stairs on the opposite side. The moment he moved, a swishing sound was heard. Rays of sharp sword chi shot out from all directions like a rainstorm. Every sword aura flickered with a different color. Gold, red, blue, purple, and cyan all had their limit. Some were fast while some were slow. It was as if many swordsmen with excellent sword techniques were attacking Chu Mu. Chu Mu was surrounded from all directions and had nowhere to dodge. Flying swan illusory steps displayed an unparalleled might. Under this dense and seemingly hopeless encirclement of sword auras, Chu Mu forcibly charged out, not letting a single sword aura hit him. But more and more sword chi appeared in front of him. They were even denser and formed a whirlpool. There was no gap. In this situation, even if the flying swan phantom steps had reached the 3rd level, it would still be useless. Chu Mu pulled out the monster-slaying sword and slashed out. The sword chi was shattered, and Chu Mu felt a strong impact on the monster-slaying sword. It almost flew out of his hand. He activated the stone-shaking force and shattered the sword chi that came after him. But the sword chi was too dense, and there was no way for him to get through. The monster-slaying sword was waved at a high speed, and every slash was as fast as the speed of sound. Chu Mu kept moving forward. With one slash, the sword light shattered the air. The sword chi suddenly disappeared, and Chu Mu realized that he had reached the stairs leading to the 8th floor. Looking back, the 7th floor had returned to normal. It was as if the dense and powerful sword chi had never appeared. Chu Mu was sure that if it was a normal sword warrior at the Qi High level, he would not be able to pass the 7th floor. If he did not back away from the first wave of sword chi, he would most likely die. Putting his thoughts back, he stepped onto the stairs leading to the 8th floor. The old man in the black robe and white robe on the 6th floor suddenly felt something. He was surprised at first, but then he smiled. The 8th floor was smaller than the 7th floor. The light was dim, but there was not a speck of dust on it. It was as if someone had been cleaning it all the time. The decorations on the 8th floor were very simple. There was a bed, a table, a chair, and a round cushion on the ground. Chu Mu glanced around and found that there were marks on the walls. The marks were straight, deep, shallow, long, short, clear, and blurry. Chu Mu could tell that they were marks left by a sword. The reward should be on those sword marks. Chu Mu thought to himself. He walked closer to the wall and carefully looked at the sword marks. He even touched them with his finger, but he did not find anything. Could it be that the sword of Gojoseon in the borderland was only used for resting? Not finding anything, Chu Mu could not help but feel suspicious. He slowly glanced around, and finally his eyes landed on the cushion. Without a doubt, this cushion was used by the sword of Gojoseon in the borderland. It looked very old and worn out. Chu Mu's body flashed and appeared next to the cushion. He thought for a while and sat on the cushion. He immediately felt a clear flow of energy spread throughout his body. It was as if his mental power had been strengthened. Everything around him became clearer, and his mind became more focused. When he looked at the sword marks on the wall again, he realized that the sword marks seemed to have changed, as if they contained something. He suddenly understood that he had found the right path. He got rid of all the distracting thoughts and focused on the crisscrossing sword mark. Chu Mu forgot everything in the outside world. There were only sword marks in his eyes. Under his gaze, every sword mark seemed to become bigger. Then, the sword marks seemed to come alive. They turned into sharp swords and danced in the air in front of Chu Mu. There were long and short swords, thick and thin swords. They seemed to be controlled and danced by countless invisible swordsmen. One sword skill after another was displayed. Some were sharp and threatening, some were light and graceful, some were unpredictable, some were continuous and flexible, and some were hot and violent. Every sword skill had its own characteristics. They were clear and obvious and easy to understand. Chu Mu was completely immersed in them, forgetting the passage of time. Gradually, Chu Mu felt that every sword technique seemed to have a sword aura fluctuation added to it. The fluctuations started weak and gradually grew stronger until the sword aura fluctuation on every sword technique was so strong that it shocked Chu Mu. He only felt that the burden on his mind was constantly increasing, and it was almost at the limit of what he could bear. In the next breath, the sword skills paused, and the sword force on them froze. In an instant, an indescribable change occurred. In the midst of the change, the sharp swords suddenly slashed at Chu Mu. Chu Mu had no way to dodge. He only felt that his mind was being destroyed, and his soul was being torn apart. An incomparable pain came from the depths of his soul and spread throughout his body. His body trembled uncontrollably. In an instant, he woke up. The sword marks were still sword marks. Chu Mu was gasping for breath. His face was pale, and sweat dripped from his forehead and flowed down his cheeks. At that moment, he felt as if his soul was about to scatter. "It's really terrifying," Chu Mu said softly. He still had lingering fear. After 10 breaths of time, he regained his composure. His face also regained its color. Chu Mu checked his body, but he did not discover any changes. He tried to release his sword force, and it filled the entire 8th level. Chu Mu's expression froze for a moment, then a look of joy appeared on his face. Unknowingly, his sword force had improved again. It had already reached the peak of perfection, saving him at least half a year's time. Now that his sword force had reached the peak of perfection, Chu Mu's strength had increased by quite a bit. He felt that if he went to the East Sage Hall to challenge for the title of Sword Hero, his chances of passing would be at least 80%. However, Chu Mu still intended to first master the Sky Desolate sword physique before making any plans. Standing up, he walked towards the stairs. When he passed by the 7th level, he did not receive any attack. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidien.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 446. His sword force had reached the peak of perfection, which was a huge gain. After Chu Mu left the Earth Wasteland building, he did not leave the desolate city immediately. Instead, he found an inn to stay in. Now that he had many desolate pills, Chu Mu believed that he could master the 7th chapter, Hair. As for the Blood chapter, it was about time. When the time came, he could use some desolate pills to refine his blood and complete it. Previously, when he was fighting against Venerable Yin Shi's aura, the desolate sword physique's power was greatly depleted. It was recovering by absorbing the desolate chi from the low-grade desolate stones, but the recovery speed was very slow and the efficiency was very low. Chumu suddenly had an idea. Could he use the desolate stones to replace the desolate pills to cultivate the desolate sword physique? During the 3 days in the Chu family, he had tried several times. The results showed that the desolate stones could indeed be used to cultivate the desolate sword physique, but they could not replace the desolate pills. Because the efficiency was too low, it was only slightly faster than simply absorbing the thin and weak desolate chi in the air. Even the low-grade desolate pills were several times faster than that. Chumu was a little suspicious of the use of the desolate stones. After closing the guest room door and sitting cross-legged on the bed, Chumu took out a mid-grade desolate pill and swallowed it. He concentrated his mental power, which was stronger than before, and controlled the pure desolate chi released by the desolate pill. It began to pass through his bones, meridians, muscles, and skin to the outside. His bones, meridians, muscles, and skin had all been refined and successfully transformed into desolate chi. Therefore, the pure desolate chi did not consume any of it, nor was it obstructed. It easily reached the surface of his skin. There were many fine hairs on his skin, which were an indispensable part of his body. These fine hairs should also be completely refined and transformed into desolate chi. In addition, his hair and other parts also needed to be transformed into desolate chi. This was another difficult task. Refining a fine hair was very simple. He just had to concentrate his mental power and wrap it with pure desolate chi. The problem was that there were too many fine hairs on his body. Not only were they long, they were also dense. He did not know how many strands there were. This was a job that required a lot of patience. Chumu was also mentally prepared and began to temper himself. If it was an ordinary swordsman, it would definitely be very troublesome because they could only refine the hair one by one. Although the time spent on each hair was not long, there were really too many hairs, so many that it was enough to drive people crazy. Chumu, on the other hand, was different. His powerful soul, powerful spiritual force, powerful will, and the ability to multitask allowed him to easily refine 10 strands of hair in one go. After refining 10 strands of hair at once, Chumu tried to refine 12 strands of hair at once. He felt that it was a bit difficult at first, so he decided to refine 13 strands of hair at once. Chumu could clearly feel the burden on his mind when he tempered 15 of them at once. This burden made him feel uncomfortable, but it was still within his tolerance range. In this way, not only could he speed up the tempering of his hair, but he could also enhance his multitasking ability. As time passed, the Sky Wasteland pills continued to be consumed. Chumu temporarily put aside other things and wholeheartedly focused on the cultivation of the Sky Wasteland sword body. 3 days, after a total of 3 days, the middle-grade Sky Wasteland pills were all consumed, and 20 high-grade Sky Wasteland pills were consumed. Chumu finally completed the cultivation of the 7th chapter, the hair chapter. His long black hair had turned yellowish-brown, and each strand contained a powerful force. As for the hair on his skin, it was too thin and difficult to see clearly. After a while, his hair returned to normal and seemed to be even darker than before. The blood is still a bit lacking. Chumu checked it and took out a high-grade Sky Wasteland pill again. His powerful will controlled the pure desolate chi to seep into the flowing blood and started to temper it. On the 4th day, the blood tempering was completed. The moment it was completed, Chumu felt a powerful force emerge from his body, as if there was a space in his body. This force was ancient and desolate, and it swept through his entire body in an instant, starting from the deepest part of his organs to his bones, to his blood, to his meridians, to his muscles, to his skin, and finally to his hair. This ancient and barren energy tempered Chumu's body from the inside out. Then, it tempered his body from the hair on the outside all the way to his organs. After the tempering was completed, this ancient and desolate force once again disappeared from his body. Only a tiny ray shot into Chu Mu's mind, but it was nowhere to be found in that inexplicable space. Chu Mu only felt that his body had changed, and that force had connected every part of his body into a whole. In the past, when he finished refining a chapter and before he finished all of them, Chu Mu felt that each chapter was like an individual existence. Yet, now that he had finished all of them, under the ancient and desolate energy, his body had become an inseparable whole. Chu Mu could not clearly describe this feeling, but he felt that it was beneficial to him, and since it was beneficial, it was good. He waved his arm and the wind whistled. He could feel that the force seemed to have increased a little. He got off the bed and moved his feet, quickly moving around the room, leaving behind layers of afterimages. Regardless of whether it was strength, speed, or explosive power, reaction, balance, etc., all had a relatively obvious increase. Chu Mu calmed down and carefully checked the force that shot into his mind, and found that it had turned into a message. The message was very simple, and Chu Mu could easily read and understand it. He was suddenly stunned. So what I have cultivated is only the first level of the Sky Wasteland sword body, and only at the entry level. Chu Mu secretly thought that the Azura sword of Gojoseon's eyes were indeed sharp. Chu Mu did not have the cultivation method after the first level of the Sky Wasteland sword body, so he did not know how to break through. However, he was only at the entry level of the first level. There were still 3 more levels: the small success level, the large success level, and the great perfection level. These 3 levels required him to continuously absorb pure desolate chi into his body and continuously strengthen himself. The first level should be enough, Chu Mu secretly said. The real reason he cultivated the Sky Wasteland sword body was to cultivate the Sky Wasteland sword code. Although it was a little depressing that he did not have the second level, it was still acceptable. He was more curious about the Sky Wasteland sword body, but Chu Mu hid this curiosity deep in his heart. He sat back on the bed, closed his eyes and cleared his mind, and recalled the contents of the Sky Wasteland sword code. The Sky Wasteland sword body had been cultivated, regardless of the first level or which level. In short, he could now begin to cultivate the Sky Wasteland sword code. Following Chu Mu's recollection, the contents of the Sky Wasteland sword code appeared from blurry to clear. The Sky Wasteland sword code was made up of 2 sections. One was the Sky Wasteland sword chi, and the other was the forging of the Sky Wasteland sword. The Sky Wasteland sword was a royal grade sword, and required the skills of a sword forging grandmaster to forge it. Until now, Chu Mu had not found any sword forging grandmaster. Of course, he had another choice, which was to cultivate the Sky Quake Energy sword forging technique. After becoming a sword forging grandmaster, he would be able to forge the Sky Wasteland sword. However, this required a certain amount of time, and Chu Mu did not know when he would be able to possess the skills of a sword forging grandmaster. Fortunately, even if the Sky Wasteland sword was forged, he would not be able to use it, because Royal Grade Sword was a sword that could only be used by Origin Realm swordsmen. Let's cultivate the Sky Wasteland sword chi first, and leave the rest for later. After muttering to himself, Chu Mu began to carefully read the section of the Sky Wasteland sword chi. The section of the Sky Wasteland sword chi was divided into 3 sections. The first section was called the Chi Training section, and as the name implied, it was to cultivate the Sky Wasteland sword chi. First, one had to eliminate the sword chi in the body, then absorb the desolate chi and transform it into the Sky Wasteland sword chi. This was a process of destruction and reconstruction. The process was not pleasant, and it required a lot of time. The second section was called the Body Tempering section, also known as the 9 Revolutions Body Tempering section. It was suitable for the 9th transformation realm to cultivate. As the name implied, it was to use the Sky Wasteland sword chi to temper the body. There was also a note at the back that stated that this was the second level of the Sky Wasteland sword body. The third section was called the Yuan condensation section, and it was a martial art that could only be cultivated after mastering the second section of the body tempering section. It was also a compulsory martial art for the Origin realm. According to the records of the Qi training section, the Sky Wasteland sword Qi technique was an extreme earth-level martial art. Once the third section, the Yuan condensation section, was mastered, it would automatically become a low heaven-level martial art. After Chu Mu finished reading, he realized that the 9 Revolutions body tempering section was the second level of the Sky Wasteland sword body. This meant that as long as his sword Qi cultivation could break through the Qi high realm and reach the 9th transformation realm, he would be able to cultivate the second level of the Sky Wasteland sword body. If the first level was already so powerful, then the second level would definitely be much more powerful than the first level. There would be an obvious increase in his strength. To cultivate the Sky Wasteland sword Qi, I have to disperse the Sky Wasteland sword Qi in my body and cultivate it from scratch. Chu Mu frowned. Since he started cultivating the Sky Wasteland sword Qi, he had put in a lot of hard work and experienced many dangers before he could achieve what he had today. Now that he had to disperse it, he felt a little reluctant. Disperse it. If I want to become stronger, then I have to disperse it, Chu Mu said firmly. If he did not choose to cultivate the Sky Wasteland sword body, then he would not have to bother and walk on another path. However, he had already decided to cultivate the Sky Wasteland sword body, and then cultivate the Sky Wasteland sword Qi. Walking on this path, there was no reason for him to retreat. Moreover, even if he did not cultivate the Sky Wasteland sword Qi, it would not be easy to find a higher-level Yuan elemental sword Qi technique to cultivate. There were not many Yuan elemental sword Qi techniques to begin with. If he wanted to cultivate, then he would have to cultivate a higher-level one, at least at the Earth level. However, no matter how hard he searched, Chu Mu felt that it was impossible to find a top Earth-level Yuan elemental sword Qi technique. Even if there was one, he would not be able to get it. A top profound-level sword Qi technique and a low Earth-level sword Qi technique were suitable for Qi high realm swordsmen. Naturally, a low Earth-level sword Qi technique would be better. A middle Earth-level sword Qi technique and a high Earth-level sword Qi technique would be suitable for 9 transformation realm swordsmen. A top Earth-level sword Qi technique would be suitable for Origin realm swordsmen. If Chu Mu cultivated a top Earth-level Sky Wasteland sword Qi, then it would mean that his starting point would be higher than other Qi high realm sword practitioners. His achievements would also be greater, and his strength would also be stronger. Once he reached the Origin realm, then the Sky Wasteland sword Qi technique would be upgraded to the low heaven level, which would surpass many Origin realm sword practitioners. I have to cultivate it, but not now. Wait until I return to the Sword Mansion, then I will focus on cultivating the Sky Wasteland sword Qi technique. Chu Mu thought to himself as he made his decision. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qi to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 447. The First City of the Daquan Dynasty. The Heaven King City, which was also the King City of the dynasty. It was the center of power in the dynasty and the most prosperous place in the entire dynasty. This was because this was the foundation of the Daquan dynasty, where the royal family resided. There were countless powerful swordsmen here, which was not something other cities could compare to. In the Heaven King City, the royal family of the Daquan dynasty was the leader, and the nobles and ministers were the assistants to ensure the stability and prosperity of the Heaven King City. As a citizen of the Daquan dynasty, it was a pity that they had never been to the Heaven King City and witnessed the prosperity and power of the Heaven King City. Once they did, they would be shocked and their fighting spirit would be ignited. Chu Mu rode on the wind-winged demonic dragon and arrived outside the Heaven King City. He was immediately shocked by this ancient and huge city. The history of the Heaven King City was even longer than the Demon Shaking City. It had existed since the founding of the De Kuan dynasty. Every part of the city walls emitted an aura of vicissitudes, which was intoxicating. As the King City, the city gate was guarded by powerful sword guards. There were 4 of them, and each of them was at the peak of the Qi High Realm. The aura they emitted was very powerful, and each of them could easily kill a normal Qi High Realm sword warrior. When Chu Mu got closer, he could vaguely feel that there was some kind of connection between the 4 sword guards. Could it be a sword array? Chu Mu thought to himself. If it was a sword array, it would be formed by 4 powerful Qi High Realm sword warriors, and they were also royal sword guards. One could imagine how powerful the sword array was. Even a sword Grand Master would be killed by it. With a little curiosity, Chu Mu walked towards the city gate. The flow of people in the King City was very large. There were many people going in and out of the city. Chu Mu saw that anyone who wanted to enter the city gate had to show a badge, which seemed to be some kind of identification. Only those who had a badge could enter the city, because there was an invisible sealing force around the city gate. Those who walked out of the city gate did not need to show their badge. This was the first time that Chu Mu had come to the King City. Naturally, he had to apply for a sword token to enter the city. The sword token was divided into 4 levels. The first level required one to pay 100 low-grade spirit stones. This allowed one to stay in the city for 1 day. This was very suitable for people who had come to the city for business and would leave immediately. The second level required one to pay 1,000 low-grade spirit stones, and one could stay in the city for 10 days. For the third level, one had to pay 10,000 low-grade spirit stones to stay in the city for 100 days. The fourth level was to pay 100,000 low-grade spirit stones and obtain a permanent sword token to enter the city. This token allowed one to stay in the city for as long as they wanted without being chased out. Of course, this was only the qualification to enter the city. If you wanted to live in the city, you would have to find your own way. King City would not arrange a good place for you to stay. They could either buy a house in King City, but even a small house in King City would cost a lot of money, or they could only stay in an inn. However, if they were to stay in King City for a long time, staying in an inn would be a big problem. This had nothing to do with Chu Mu. He didn't intend to buy a house in King City for a long time. The reason why he came here was because of the Eastern Sage Branch Hall. If one said that King City was the territory of the Great Kuan royal clan, then the Eastern Sage Branch Hall would be a transcendent existence above the royal clan. The Eastern Sage Branch Hall was a branch of the Eastern Sage Branch Hall in Eastern Sage City. The Eastern Sage Branch Hall was the strongest power in the entire Eastern Sword domain. It was incomparable, and in the entire Eastern Sword domain, there wasn't a single dynasty or sword sect that could be compared to it. In fact, in every king city of the Eastern Sword domain, there would be a Eastern Sage Branch Hall. Because the Eastern Sage Branch Hall had a transcendent status and power that reigned supreme above the 10 great dynasties, even the royal clan wouldn't dare to oppose it. In addition, the Eastern Sage Branch Hall had never interfered with the conflicts between the various dynasties or sword sections. They also wouldn't participate in the fight for resources. Hence, the 10 great dynasties and sword sects all tacitly acknowledged the transcendent status of the Eastern Sage Branch Hall. The Eastern Sage Branch Hall was established in every king city. There was only a single purpose for them: to hunt for sword heroes. After Chu Mu paid 1,000 low-grade spirit stones and obtained the Grade 2 sword token, he passed through the restrictions and entered the Eastern Sage Branch Hall. The prosperity of the Eastern Sage Branch Hall was out of Chu Mu's expectations, causing him to be stunned for a moment. The streets were twice as wide as the streets of Desolate City. The shops on the left and right sides of the streets were all decorated in a very tasteful manner. Some were extravagant, some were simple and unadorned. With a single glance, one could tell that the quality of these shops was extraordinary. Of all the cities that Chu Mu had visited before, none of them could be compared to the Eastern Sage Branch Hall. It was like comparing a firefly to the bright moon. After a breath of time, Chu Mu recovered from his shock. After asking the passers-by for directions, he walked along the wide streets in the direction of the Eastern Sage Branch Hall. As he walked, he would glance at the shops on the left and right sides of the streets, as well as the passers-by. This was also a type of tempering experience. The Eastern Sage Branch Hall only had a single level, but it was very high. First, one had to walk up the 99 steps and arrive at an open space covered with green stones. In the middle of the open space, there was a statue of a swordsman holding a sharp sword and pointing it towards the sky. The statue was very lifelike and had a special aura surrounding it. This aura was very strong. A normal Qi High Realm swordsman would not be able to withstand it. Only those who had reached the peak of the Qi High Realm could barely withstand it, but they would not be able to withstand it for a long period of time. Only those who had outstanding talent and could fight above their level would be able to withstand this powerful aura and walk across the open space towards the entrance of the branch hall. It could be said that this aura was the first challenge of the Sword Hero Challenge. If one could not even withstand this aura, then how could one challenge the Sword Hero Challenge? Directly facing the statue was a huge door of the branch hall. On the door of the branch hall, there were 4 big red words, Eastern Sage Branch Hall. It looked like it was carved with a sword. It was extremely sharp, as if a powerful swordsman was practicing his sword skills. When you saw those 4 words, you would feel as if your consciousness was being pulled out of your body, as if a powerful swordsman was attacking you with his sword. The swordsman's swordsmanship was unfathomable and impeccable. Those who did not have enough swordsmanship would be defeated. You could not choose not to look at those 4 words, because when you walked towards the door of the branch hall, you would definitely see the door. Once you saw the door, you would see those 4 words, which contained an indescribable mystery. This was the second challenge. The first challenge tested one's aura. The second challenge tested one's swordsmanship. Only after passing both challenges could one enter the branch hall. Otherwise, one would be blocked outside. No matter if it was the aura test or the swordsmanship test, they were nothing to Chu Mu. Chu Mu easily walked through the door of the branch hall. Stepping through the door of the branch hall, Chu Mu had a strange feeling. It was as if he had crossed over some kind of boundary. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in a huge branch hall without a door. The branch hall was dozens of meters tall. The top of the branch hall was circular like a huge bowl that was upside down. Countless luminous pearls were embedded in it, making it look like a group of stars. In the middle of the branch hall, there was a sword steel that was 10 meters tall. The sword steel was black, like the blade of a great sword that was embedded in the floor of the branch hall. The tip of the sword pointed towards the ceiling. Besides Chu Mu, there were 3 other people standing next to the sword steel. One of them was a hunchbacked elder wearing a gray robe, one was a young swordsman wearing a black robe, and the other was a young swordsman wearing a red robe. Chu Mu's arrival had attracted the attention of these 3 people. They all looked at Chu Mu. The hunchbacked elder's murky eyes flashed for a second before returning to normal. However, the eyes of the other 2 young swordsmen kept flashing, as if they were trying to see through Chu Mu. In their eyes, Chu Mu was just a young swordsman in his 20s. They were very surprised that he was able to pass the first and second challenges. Chu Mu also noticed that the black-robed swordsman was a core disciple of the Mo Luo sword sect, and the red-robed swordsman was a core disciple of the Real Flame sword sect. Both of them were at the peak of the Qi High Realm, and their auras were extraordinary. They were most likely here to challenge for the Sword Hero title. They must be very strong, or else they wouldn't have the confidence to do so. Kid, you don't look like a disciple of the 4 big sword sects. Are you a student of the Great Kuan Sword Palace, or are you from the Proud Moon House or the Scattered Sword League? The black-robed swordsman raised his eyebrows and asked him politely, "You are only at the Lo-Chi High Realm, and you want to challenge for the Sword Hero title? Aren't you being too confident?" Chu Mu didn't have a good impression of the Mo Luo sword sect. He didn't even bother to look at the swordsman after hearing what he said. This made the black-robed swordsman frown. His face turned cold, and his eyes flashed with coldness. If it weren't for the fact that this was the East Saint Sub-Palace, he would have already taken out his sword and taught Chu Mu a lesson. As for the true Flame Sword sect disciples, they didn't say anything. Instead, their faces were full of interest, as if they were very curious as to why Chu Mu, who was so young and only had the sword aura of the Qi High Realm, would challenge the Sword Hero title. Since the ancient times, there had been swordsmen who had won the title of Sword Hero when they were only at the Low Qi High Realm, but they were very rare. At least in the past 100 years, there hadn't been one. In the past 100 years, the current #1 sword hero of the Great Kuan Dynasty, Mu Longqing, was only 23 years old when he was only at the Qi High Realm, and Deshang was only able to challenge the Sword Hero and win the title of Sword Hero of No Return. There were many rumors about the Sword Hero of No Return, Mu Longqing, in the Great Kuan Dynasty. His strength was terrifyingly strong, and it was said that none of the other Sword Hero-level swordsmen could withstand more than 10 attacks from him. Therefore, Mu Longqing was recognized as the strongest sword hero in the dynasty, and also had the title of #1 sword hero. Now, Chu Mu, who was only 20 years old and only at the Low Qi High Realm, wanted to challenge the sword hero. No matter how you looked at it, no one thought that he would succeed. "Young man, are you here to challenge for the sword hero title?" the hunchbacked old man said with a hoarse voice. "Yes, senior." Chu Mu saluted with his sword. This hunchbacked old man was the manager of the East Saint Sub-Palace. 20 years old, Low Qi High Realm, talent is not bad. But you have to know that every swordsman can only challenge for the Sword Hero title once every 5 years. If you fail this time, you will have to wait for another 5 years. The hunchbacked old man said. Then, his murky eyes showed a look of realization. You are 20 years old now, and if you fail this time, you will only be 25 years old in 5 years. You can challenge again. This time, you can experience it and prepare for the next challenge. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 448. Chu Mu will soon become a sword hero. The hunchbacked old man was sure that Chu Mu would fail this challenge, which also meant that he would have another chance to challenge 5 years later. Of course, that was under the condition that his cultivation was still in the Sea of Qi realm. It's good to be young. Even if you fail once, you still have a chance to try again. Unlike us, once we fail, we will exceed the age limit in 5 years and have no chance of becoming a sword hero. The black-robed swordsman sighed. It sounded like he was lamenting, but in fact, he was mocking Chu Mu for being young and ignorant, for overestimating himself. Regarding this, Chu Mu's attitude was to ignore it, which made the black-robed swordsman gnash his teeth in anger, but there was nothing he could do. Chu Mu could see very clearly that the hunchbacked old man and the other 2 young swordsmen all thought that he would not be able to challenge a sword hero, but Chu Mu himself was very confident. He had already understood the sword hero challenge in detail. No matter who challenged a sword hero, the difficulty was the same. Those who were stronger would naturally have a higher chance of succeeding, while those who were weaker would have a harder time or even fail. Although Chu Mu did not know how difficult it was to challenge a sword hero title, he was clear on one thing, and that was that he could succeed. Whenever he had time, Chu Mu would recall the battle between the Gold Fragment Sword Hero and the Wild Dragon Sword Hero, and put himself in their shoes. At the beginning, he felt that he could not fight against them, but gradually, he felt that he could barely fight against them. As time passed, he gradually became stronger, and after experiencing the massacre of millions of beasts, Chu Mu could finally fight against them and even defeat them. Especially after creating the steel chop sword technique, Chu Mu was even more confident that he could kill them in close range with one sword. This was only the scene in Chu Mu's imagination. It could not be considered the true strength of the Gold Fragment Sword Hero and the Wild Dragon Sword Hero, but it was at least 50% of their strength. To be able to kill a Gold Fragment Sword Hero or Wild Dragon Sword Hero with 50% of their strength, one's strength would be very strong. It should be known that both Gold Fragment Sword Hero and Wild Dragon Sword Hero had held the title of Sword Hero for a few years. Within these few years, their strength had increased by a lot. Compared to when they had just succeeded in the challenge, their strength had increased by more than 2 times. This was one of the sources of Chu Mu's confidence. The second source was that his sword force had already reached the peak of perfection. The third source was that his tearing concept had reached 70%. The fourth source was that he had comprehended the ultimate sword skill, chopping iron. The fifth source was that he had obtained the monster beheading sword. On the other hand, sword chi cultivation was not that important compared to other things. For example, if 2 swordsmen were the same in all other aspects, the only difference was their sword aura cultivation. Naturally, the swordsman with the higher sword aura cultivation would be more powerful. Looking at Chu Mu, he was only at the low Qi High realm, yet he was able to kill swordsmen at the peak of Qi High realm as easily as killing chickens and dogs. Therefore, sword Qi was the foundation of a swordsman, but not everything. It was only a small part of a swordsman's strength. Since Chu Mu had 5 sources of confidence, if he still could not challenge the Sword Hero title, then he might as well give up on the sword and live in seclusion. Maybe some people would say that Chu Mu should wait a few years before challenging again, then it would be 100% safe. Actually, the reason why Chu Mu decided to challenge the Sword Hero title now was not only because of the title, but also because of the practical benefits. The earlier he could get the title, the earlier he could get the benefits, and the better it would be for him to increase his strength. Since you are all sure that you want to challenge the Sword Hero title, then you can start now. Only one person can enter at a time. The hunchbacked old man said slowly, "Remember, if you are not careful during the challenge, you will die. If you feel that you cannot continue the challenge and do not want to be killed, then you can shout out and surrender. Then you can live, but the price is that you will fail the challenge." As he finished speaking, the hunchbacked old man pointed out with his finger. Sword chi shot out into the air like water hitting a transparent glass. Then, a door slowly appeared in the air. The hunchbacked old man's eyes were not cloudy, and there was only a breathtaking light. His gray hair danced in the air like a demon god, and a horrifying aura spread out in all directions, making Chu Mu and the other 2 feel oppressed and suffocated. "Open!" A deep shout suddenly exploded like thunder, causing Chu Mu and the other 2's expressions to change drastically. That shout was like thunder exploding in their ears, making their blood boil. The door that appeared in the air seemed to weigh 100,000 pounds. Under the old man's shout, it suddenly opened. An indescribable ancient aura rushed out like a storm of sword chi, blowing Chu Mu and the other 2's robes and black hair. Their bodies were like willows, and they almost could not stand still and took a few steps back. The storm-like aura lasted for 10 breaths of time before it stopped. "Which one of you will go in first?" The light in the hunchbacked old man's eyes disappeared, and his eyes became cloudy again. His horrifying aura was restrained, and he once again looked like an old man with 1 foot in the grave. If anyone dared to underestimate him, they would definitely die a horrible death. "I'm the first to arrive. Naturally, I'll go in first." The core disciple of the Moro sword sect laughed as he coldly glanced at Chu Mu. He then took a step forward and entered through the open door. Looking from the outside, there was nothing but emptiness behind the door. It was impossible to tell where it led to. As though he knew the doubts of Chu Mu and the other 2, the hunchbacked old man continued, Inside this door is the place where the Sword Hero title challenge is held. It's an illusory realm. Illusory realm, the red-robed swordsman exclaimed in shock. Chu Mu silently mused that the Eastern Sage sub-hall was truly generous. That's right. This illusory realm is different from ordinary illusory realm. It can also be called a half-illusory realm. The hunchbacked old man continued, because the size of this illusory realm can't be compared to other illusory realms. The difference is simply too great. And because this illusory realm is artificially created, its functions cannot be compared to the real illusory realm. Hence, it is called a half-illusory realm. Artificially created? This time, even Chu Mu was shocked. Although he had read in the ancient records that an illusory realm was artificially created, it was just like a legend. But today they actually saw an illusory realm artificially created in front of their very eyes. Although it wasn't big enough compared to the real illusory realm, and wasn't perfect enough, it was still extremely shocking. It's hard to imagine. What kind of expert would be able to create a half-illusory realm? Chu Mu sucked in a breath of cold air as he thought to himself. No wonder only one person could enter the Sword Hero title challenge at a time, and not all at once. It was because a half-illusory realm was simply too rare, and its value was extraordinary. His heart gradually calmed down. Chu Mu didn't know how long it would take for the core disciples of the Moro Sword sect to complete the challenge. Hence, he shifted his gaze away from the door and onto the heavenly sword steel. On the 10-meter-tall heavenly sword steel, names were carved one after another. Every name was shining with a faint luster. The name at the top was Mu Longqing, and behind his name were the two words No Return. Chu Mu's gaze shifted from the top to the bottom. The second and third names fell into Chu Mu's eyes one by one, as if they were branded into his heart, leaving a deep impression. The words behind every name were the title of the Sword Hero. For example, the first name Mu Longqing, No Return, meant that his title was No Return Sword Hero. There were a total of 81 names on the heavenly sword steel, which meant that there were 81 sword heroes in the Dakuan dynasty. The order of the names on the steel was based on the time they obtained the title of Sword Hero, and not their strength. Therefore, it was hard to tell the difference in strength from the order of the names. Of course, Mu Longqing, who was ranked first, was publicly recognized as the number one sword hero of the Dakuan dynasty. Under normal circumstances, the swordsman who obtained the title of Sword Hero earlier would be stronger. There were only a few exceptions. The names of Desolate Border Sword Hero Jiang Lycan, Gold Fragment Sword Hero, Mad Dragon Sword Hero, and so on were all on the steel. Soon, my name will appear on the steel as well. Chu Mu's eyes flashed with a hint of passion. The young swordsman in the red robe beside him had an even more passionate look in his eyes than Chu Mu. He also had the same thought. The 82nd Sword Hero would definitely be him. He was extremely confident in himself, and did not care about the others. Suddenly, Chu Mu noticed that the second name on the heavenly sword steel was flashing. After flashing 3 times, the name suddenly dimmed down and disappeared without a trace. It was as if it had never existed. Immediately after, Chu Mu's vision became blurry. The heavenly sword steel seemed to have undergone some changes. Chu Mu looked carefully and was surprised to find that other than the first name Mu Longqing, all the other names on the heavenly sword steel had moved up by 1 rank. That meant that the third name had become the second name. Chu Mu did not understand this situation. When a sword hero dies or reaches the level of Qi High, the name will automatically disappear from the heavenly sword steel. The hunchbacked elder did not look at the heavenly sword steel. He knew what had happened like the back of his hand. That person's name flashed 3 times, which means that he has reached a higher level than the Qi High realm. If it flashed once, it means that he is dead. No matter which one it is, it means that the title of Sword Hero has been removed from his head. After the explanation, Chu Mu finally understood. Although he had done his research, there were some things that could not be made public. The hunchbacked elder did not say anything else. Chu Mu did not ask any more questions, and the red-robed swordsman did not say anything either. Time passed by slowly. After about half an hour, a human shadow flew out from the door and landed on the ground in a somewhat embarrassing manner. His chi was in a mess. It was obvious that he had used up a lot of sword chi. "You have failed," the hunchbacked elder said lightly. This person was the core disciple of the Mo Luo sword martial school. After he failed, his face was filled with disappointment. He was already 29 years old and had no chance of attaining the title of sword hero. There was nothing that could be more shocking than this. The red-robed swordsman had a serious expression on his face. A hint of nervousness flashed through his eyes. He took a deep breath and walked towards the door that led to the semi-ethereal realm. He then disappeared in a flash. The black-robed swordsman was very upset, but he did not leave immediately. It seemed like he wanted to stay and see how the others were doing. If they all failed, then it would be a consolation for him. When he saw Chu Mu, his eyes were filled with anger and disdain. Unfortunately, Chu Mu did not even bother to look at him, which made the black-robed swordsman unable to vent his anger. He felt extremely uncomfortable and almost died from vomiting blood. Chu Mu knew that after the core disciples of the real flame sword martial school came out, it would be his turn. Even if he had 100% confidence, Chu Mu would still try his best. Therefore, he started to adjust his chi and adjusted himself to his peak condition. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation.